we ready to proceed? Everybody's good? Okay. Right. Good afternoon and welcome to this online hearing of the Committee of Adjustment for the City of Ottawa. The Committee of Adjustment is a quasi-judicial tribunal appointed by City Council to make decisions on certain types of applications under the Planning Act. My name is John Blatherwick and I will be chairing this hearing today. With me are my fellow panel members, Heather McLean, Bonnie Oakeshara, and Stan Wilder. Please note that this video conference is being live streamed on YouTube. The video will be archived along with today's agenda on the city's website. Before we begin, we have a few items to outline for your information. While the issues surrounding development in the city are broad, our mandate is quite limited. The committee cannot consider aspects of the proposal that are not related to the required variances: noise, pollution, property maintenance, property values, prosecution for illegal construction, personal comments regarding neighbors, agents, or applicants, and additional variances without proper public notice. If there is an identified need for an additional variance or variances, including an increase in the extent of the relief required, a recirculation of the application is required. As part of the statutory public notification requirements, each applicant was required to post a sign on the property and file a statutory declaration confirming the sign posting. We have none today. Therefore, I will have to administer the oath to all of the applicants and or agents who are with us for today's hearing. Regarding quorum, if this is lost during the hearing due to technical difficulties, the proceedings will be paused to allow time for the resolution of the issue. Failing the ability to reinstate quorum, hearing of the items remaining will resume at the outset of the next regularly scheduled meeting of the committee. In terms of the hearing process, listed on the agenda and appearing on the screen are the applications we will hear today. For the sake of efficiency, the committee may deal with agenda items in a different order. And today we are going to deal in the regular agenda with item 10 first, because there is simultaneous translation for several residents in the city who wish to be involved in this hearing. Note that the committee members have reviewed the application materials prior to this hearing and any written submissions received in support or in opposition. In addition, the committee will hear today oral submissions from any interested parties as part of our proceedings. The committee may ask for a brief presentation by the applicant, followed by questions from the members where clarification may be required. The public submissions portion of the hearing will then begin, and any interested parties will be invited to make their submissions to the committee. Panel members then ask follow-up questions where added clarification may be required. When you are called upon to provide your comments, we will ask you to do the following. Start with stating your name and municipal address for the record. We may ask you to spell your name. Then begin your submission by addressing your comments to the panel members. You may ask questions, but please direct them only to the chair. Please limit your comments to a maximum of 5 minutes. Any exceptions will be at the committee's discretion. Once all interested parties have had an opportunity to address the panel, the public submissions portion of the hearing will then be closed. The committee will then make an oral decision to either grant or deny the application. The committee may also choose to reserve its decision. In such case, the panel will deliberate further on the evidence presented immediately following adjournment of the public hearing. In either case, the committee will send within 10 days of its decision and to all parties and those who have requested it, a written decision that sets out the reasons for the decision. All decisions of the committee are subject to a 20-day appeal period during which the decision can be appealed to the local planning appeal tribunal for a fee. We have some items of business before we get on to the agenda. First of all, are there any members who have a conflict with any of the items on today's agenda or panel 2's or panel 3's agenda? Seeing none, no. All right, and we have minutes to adopt from January 13th, 2021. Any changes necessary to the minutes, members? No. All in favor of adopting the minutes as provided? The minutes are adopted. All right, we will begin with we have a number of them today. And the first adjournment request that we have before us today is for items 5 and 6 on the agenda, and this would be 304 Lanark Avenue. We have adjournment requests requested by the Westboro Beach Community Association and the Planning Department. So if the Planning Department would like to articulate its request for an adjournment, please.
Yes, hello. The property has, the proposed development on the property by Novatech has the problems with trees. And Forestry Services requested the adjournment for considering the redesign for the development and meeting the new tree bylaw.
So at the, I'm reading from your report, the adjournments requested to allow time to consider redesign in a way that's compatible with the city's goal of balancing intensification with maintaining a healthy urban tree canopy.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. And that's at the request of the Forestry Department for you guys. Mr. Wilder?
Thank you. Would Ms. Young be online as well? I'd like to hear from our forester in context of what the Planning Department just said in their comments, please.
Ms. Young, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thanks. So yes, the adjournment request is because there are 4 distinctive trees that will be impacted by this proposal. 2 of them only are proposed for removal, but one of those is jointly owned with the neighbor. And I feel that a redesign should be considered to try to design around that tree or permission given from the neighbor ahead of time to remove that tree.
Thank you, Ms. Young. Does the Westboro Beach Community Association have a representative online? It's supposed to be Ms. Lasso. Is she there? Ah, we see, we have a picture. Do we have audio? Can't hear you, Ms. Lasso. You're muted, Ms. Lasso.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, could you give us your address, please?
Hello?
Yeah, could you give us your address, please?
I'm not sure if anyone can hear me.
Yes, we can.
I will, on behalf of the Westboro Beach Community Association, we would like to request a 1-month delay. We have contacted 24 of our neighbors on Lanark Avenue, and they've all indicated they'd like to participate in the consultation process. We don't feel that we've had enough time to look at the designs in detail and hear from Novatech regarding a number of questions we have. And we do have a number. So we're hoping we can get a 1-month delay to move forward with our proposal for the the Committee of Adjustment.
What kind of consultation has taken place to this point?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
We obviously have an audio problem. All right, well, we'll just take the comment from Westboro Beach as is. Do we have Mr. Chown who's going to respond on behalf of the applicant?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And if the committee coordinator would assist, we actually have a presentation we'd like to make to the committee with respect to the adjournment requests. I want to start by saying we object quite strenuously to the request from the Westboro Beach Community Association to adjourn these applications for a month. And I'll just go through this quickly. I'll remind the committee on the first screen that you actually have a statutory obligation to hear our applications within 30 days of filing. These applications were filed on December the 16th. which was 64 days ago. So a delay of another 28 days or 4 weeks is certainly unreasonable. If I go to the next slide, please.
I can't hear anything.
I don't know how to deal with Ms. Lassau's
I can't-
dilemma. So we have shared with the committee a timeline of our efforts to reach out to the Westboro Beach Community Association. We were copied on an email from Ms. Lassau, which actually confirms these dates in terms of our efforts to reach out to this community association. We first reached out on December the 17th, shortly after filing the applications. We followed up again on December the 22nd, at which point in time we were informed that the information package that we had provided electronically would be shared with the Westboro Beach Community Association zoning committee. We heard nothing over the holidays or early in January. We reached out again on January the 26th and got a response from Ms. Lassau on January 27th, indicating that the Westboro Beach Community Association would not support or oppose the applications for 304 Lanark. That was followed up on February the 8th with an email from Ms. Lassau informing us that she had become aware of concerns from a number of residents on Lanark Avenue and that they would appreciate having some additional information. So we mobilized quite quickly. If I can go to the next screen, please. Sorry, that's just the email from Ms. Lassau. If I can go to the next slide, please. So on February the 9th, which is more than a week ago, it's a week ago yesterday, actually Serene Shizada, who's on the call with me, hand-delivered this notice to every single one of the households on Lanark Avenue, east of Churchill. This notice provides the site plan, which was filed with the applications to the committee, and the 3D rendering you see on the left-hand side in terms of what the proposed long semi-detached dwellings would look like if this project goes forward. This notice was to advise the residents that we had organized a meeting for Monday evening this past week. So this notice basically gave the residents 1 week's notice of a community information meeting, which we organized quickly in response to the comments we received from Ms. Lassau. I can tell the chair and members of committee that nobody showed up for the meeting on Monday evening. I don't know why, and I don't know when the residents are looking for information and we offer to meet with them and provide information, why nobody showed up for that meeting is beyond me. We've made efforts over the last 2 months to address any questions or concerns. We don't need another month delay in order for the community to respond. I think that's unreasonable and unfair given the efforts that we've made to reach out to this community association. Having said that, obviously we're aware of the comments from staff and from the city forester, which we were made aware of earlier this week. We have a meeting scheduled with the city forester Friday morning to talk about trees. We would be prepared to adjourn for 2 weeks, but as I said at the outset, object strenuously to the request to adjourn this application for a month. I'm happy to answer any questions that the committee may have.
Thank you, Mr. Chown. So you'd be, Mr. Belmar, do we have space in the next hearing for this application, should we decide to adjourn for 2 weeks?
Yes, Mr. Chair, as long as no recirculation is involved, we could accommodate an adjournment to the next hearing date. My only concern is whether or not the planning department would feel that is sufficient time to review or pursue any redesign, and whether that's sufficient time for public consultation.
Does the department have any comments on the Secretary Treasurer's?
Preliminary planning department thinks that the time for 2 weeks is sufficient and the application can pass for the next hearing.
Okay. All right, so 2 weeks is sufficient for the planning department. Mr. Robillard, you wish to speak just to the adjournment, please? I can't hear you, sir. Does anybody else hear Mr. Robillard?
Nope.
No. We have no volume. Yeah. Huh. Sorry, Mr. Robillard, we can't hear you. You'll have to turn your volume up. All right, well,
Perhaps Mr. Robillard could phone in. The phone numbers are on the Zoom invitation.
In the meantime, Mr. Chairman, I don't normally ask this, but I'd like some advice or direction in terms of what the expectations of the committee would be in terms of further communications with the Westboro Beach Community Association. We've already hosted a meeting and nobody showed up.
well, if you have a 2-week period, Mr. Chown, perhaps you could reach out to the neighbors in the community association again and finally have your meeting.
I guess I can try.
Yeah, I think that would probably be best. Do you envision, we're not getting into the meat of this, but is there a possibility there will be a design change because of the department's concerns regarding trees, distinctive trees on site?
It's early to answer that question, sir. I'm hoping not, quite frankly, but certainly any design changes won't affect the application that's before the committee, in that all we're trying to do is split the lot in half. There's no relief being sought with respect to the development itself.
Okay. Ms. Lasso, have you got volume again? Your volume is muted, Ms. Lasso. Ms. Lasso, please. Ms. McLean, you have a comment?
Hi there. I wonder if you can hear me.
Yes, I can now.
I'm having trouble here. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Oh, perfect. I was cut off before and I couldn't hear any of the discussion. If you will just give me a minute. We did have a number of ways we did communicate with Mr. Chow a number of times. And unfortunately, we had a health crisis in one of our community members. And I've just recently taken over this portfolio. So that would explain why we were not able to speak with Novatech. Since we got things rolling, as I mentioned earlier, we have 24 neighbors ready to begin the consultation. We actually have a meeting tomorrow, and we will have a number of questions for Novatech, as well as we need to see the designs in more detail.
Mr. Chown has indicated that Novatech is willing to deal with or accept a 2-week adjournment.
We need more. Sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Pardon, go ahead.
I would really like a month delay to get.
I don't think a month is necessary, quite frankly. I think 2 weeks is more than adequate.
Well, we'll need to get rolling on it immediately. The tactics used by Novotel have been very disappointing in terms of intimidating the neighbors and knocking on doors and phone calls and emails, and people have gotten quite angry. So I don't think that's the way to do a consultation. And I'm hoping that we can be a bit more transparent and open rather than the community association and the surrounding neighbors being pushed around.
And that's, you know, that's a discussion to have with the representatives of Novatech or the applicant. Quite frankly, that's not a discussion that we're gonna have here at this panel. We don't deal with those kinds of issues.
I appreciate that. Our submission was for a 1 month delay, and I did indicate why we needed that 1 month.
Yeah, well, Mr. Chown has indicated that Novatech would be happy with a 2-week delay, and the planning department has also indicated that a 2-week delay would be sufficient for the department. So, Ms. McLean, any comment?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of comments. I think we encourage the pre-consultation, but I believe we encourage it prior to the filing of an application. Mm-hmm. So that if there are any changes to be made, they're made before the application is filed, and then we don't have to deal with last minute revisions. I'm somewhat sympathetic to the community association in that this application was filed over the Christmas period, and I understand that there was a bit of disorganization in the association, but I also hear the applicant, and they've reached out, and so I think I will be supporting a 2-week adjournment of the application. I just have a question for Mr. Chowan. The planning report seems to indicate that they consider the site sufficient to accommodate the proposed development. Have they seen elevation drawings? Are there elevation drawings around, or?
We have not submitted elevation drawings with the application because the LPAT has spoken in that what this project actually is going to look like isn't relevant for consideration of an application where we're simply creating 2 new lots and the future development is going to fully conform to the performance standards. So we haven't shared elevations with anybody because it's not required. We have shared the renderings of what the project will look like from the street with the community association, as I just showed you. That was part of the notice that went out on Tuesday of last week for the meeting that we held on Monday that nobody chose to attend. It was an excellent opportunity for the neighbors and the community association to ask us questions. We were prepared to show elevations on Monday evening. We were prepared to answer questions on Monday evening. Nobody showed up. But we will share elevations with the community association if we're able to meet with them.
And could you share those with us?
We will when we present in 2 weeks.
All right, Mr. Wilder.
Could I just say one more just before I turn it over, it's turned over to Stan, is the LPAT decision that was attached or that I received dealt with a Churchill property, although the letter referred to I think it was Lanark, or
there should have been 3 decisions attached to that email.
Yeah, I only saw the decision for Churchill, so perhaps, or I think the letter said Roosevelt, but
correct.
We only or at least I only received the Churchill, so maybe in the 2-week adjournment, we could get the LPAT decisions, and I think I will be perhaps challenging you on the need for plans, and the sooner the committee sees those elevations, I think will be helpful. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McLean. Mr. Wilder?
If this meeting on Friday with Ms. Young does produce some alterations, say, to the site in terms of how the project will proceed, in terms of addressing the issue with the trees, how will that be conveyed to the community association if you're only meeting on Friday And if you are required to make some changes to the landscaping, I appreciate, Mr. Chown, that what you're looking for here is just a reduction in lot area. Notwithstanding, I think the community is entitled to see any changes in case there are questions from other residents on the street with regards to the trees and the preservation of those trees. Somehow, I'd like to get that information back from Friday's meeting to the community association. Still, I guess somehow within that 2-week period, if that's what the community, our committee decides.
So I'm reasonably confident that we're not going to arrange a meeting with the community before Friday. That would be unreasonable in terms of notice. So the earliest we're going to meet with the community association will be sometime next week. I don't know if that's Tuesday or Wednesday. If Ms. Lisseau wants to propose some dates, I'd be open to some dates next week. And we will make some decisions very quickly after our meeting with the city forester and other staff on Friday. But I reiterate that whatever's decided in terms of the development of this property, it doesn't affect the application that's before the committee today. The application is simply to sever the lot in two, with the only relief being requested is lot area. So the only consideration for the committee is whether or not those lots are appropriate in terms of their size, lot area, lot width in this neighborhood. And the reality is that the lots that we're creating are identical in size to more than 70 lots in this neighborhood. That's the issue before the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chown. All right. So.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, Mr. Robillard is now on the phone, so.
All right. Mr. Robillard, to the matter of an adjournment on this application. Mr. Robillard, are you there? Well, his dog's there.
Hello, yes, I'll be very brief.
Just to the adjournment, Mr. Robillard.
Yes, it is. We live across the street at 303 Lanark, and we received no notice of any meetings. We just became aware of what was being proposed when we received the variance request, and my tenants in the front told me somebody was coming door to door just the other day. So it's unfair for them to suggest at Novatech that they consulted or tried to consult. They didn't bother to tell the people across the street. So a month adjournment is more appropriate than 2 weeks.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mr. Robillard. All right, to the matter of adjournment, you've heard from the neighbors. You've heard from Mr. Chown on behalf of the applicant. We can accommodate this application on the hearing of March 3rd. All in favor of adjourning this hearing until the 3rd of March? Yeah, the application is adjourned. Thanks very much and have a good meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, slide 6. The next adjournment application for today is item number 966 Stewart Street. And the application, the adjournment request has been made by the planning department. If the planning department would like to articulate their request for adjournment, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. The adjournment, pardon?
How you just said hello, Mr. Nadeau.
Oh, hello. Regarding the adjournment request, it's made for two reasons. First among them is that we identified that a rear yard area variance was needed in addition to the required rear yard setback variance. And then beyond that, in communication with the Heritage Department, it's my understanding that this application, a concurrent application concerning this property is going before the Built Heritage Subcommittee in April.
Okay.
And as such, they won't have a decision on that front until then.
So the department's preferred adjournment would be that we adjourn sine die, given that Heritage isn't going to get around to this until April.
Yes, I don't imagine it's possible to secure a date for the second hearing in April. Is that looking further forward than the committee is comfortable with?
Mr. Secretary Treasurer.
Mr. Chair, that's certainly up to the panel to decide. The second hearing in April is April 21st.
Okay.
And so I'm uncertain about the schedule for the heritage permit, if that is going to planning committee or to council. Before then, that April 21st date might be appropriate. Otherwise, May 5th might be the better one.
Mr. Nadeau?
I am checking my report as we speak. The council meeting is said to be taking place on April 14th. So it's my understanding that we would have time to have things in order by the 21st.
By the 21st of April, okay. We have, I believe, the agent for the applicant online as well.
Yes, Scott Irwin.
Mr. Irwin, to the adjournment. You've
The
heard
21st is fine.
April 21st, okay. All right, so everybody's in agreement. To the members of the panel, all in favor of adjourning this application until the 21st of April. The application is adjourned. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
9. Next application up for adjournment are applications 12 and 13. They deal with 134, 132A and B, 134A and B, Forward Avenue. These, again, this is a request from the planning department, and apparently there's a need to amend variances. So if the planning department would like to articulate the need for an adjournment on this application.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So the application submitted is requesting variances from the R4S subzone, which of course was in effect for these lands until mid-October. However, of course, the R4 revisions have made it such that this site is now zoned R4 UD or UB, my apologies. And as such, given that this submission was made in December, it is our preference that reference be made to the new pertinent zoning. Moreover, in terms of notification, again, we don't anticipate that the applicant will be changing plans. The request for the lot size variance is for approximately 229 square meters, and we expect that will remain the same. However, the lot size requirement has changed in going from R4S to the new R4 zone. As such, the scope of the needed variance is changing.
So, Mr. Secretary Treasurer, do we need to recirculate this application?
Yes, Mr. Chair, since the requested relief is greater than what has been circulated, unfortunately, there's no way around that particular requirement.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Belmar. Mr. Hume.
Unfortunately, Mr. Chairman, we're going to have to take the advice of your Secretary Treasurer. I don't think that there's any way around that requirement for recirculation, although we were prepared to move forward today, and we have no objections and even a letter of support from the Community Association. It seems we've been tripped up by our own process, and so we'll take and having been in this chair a long time, or I mean a chair quite some time. I know that making sure that the proper process may ensure that in the long run, it is a smoother application. So
can we get this on the agenda for the 17th of March, Mr. Secretary Treasurer?
Yes, we can, Mr. Chair.
That'd be appropriate, Mr. Hume?
March
17th
17th.
March?
that's the soonest, I think, Mr. Chairman, and it's with the need to recirculate because your applications for the 3rd are already been released, so it will have to be the 17th.
Yeah, and Mr. Nato, the 17th of March is okay with the department?
Yes, the 17th would be perfect.
Okay, so we'll adjourn this until the 17th of March. All in favor of adjourning this application until March 17th? The application is adjourned. We will see you in several weeks.
Thank you very much, Mr.
Thank you,
Chairman.
gentlemen. And the final adjournment request that we have today is item 15 on the agenda. And this would be 57 Hutchinson Avenue. And once again, the planning department is requesting adjournment sine die on this application. Would the planning department like to articulate their?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. An adjournment has been requested because city staff require additional detail for review of the application. The property is located in the mature neighborhood overlay, and a streetscape character analysis is required to determine that the proposed addition complies with existing street and neighborhood patterns. And as a result of the required streetscape character analysis, a minor variances may be required for an attached garage, in addition to the rear yard setback minor variance that was requested. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Mr. Sekula. Mr. Miraz is the agent for the applicant. Is he there?
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yep. So you've heard the department's request for an adjournment sine die on this application.
Yes, thank you, Chair and members of committee. My name is Peter Moroz, and I'm the owner of 57 Hutchison and proponent for the application.
Yeah.
I understand that city planning staff has requested an adjournment, and before I concur with the request, I would like to make following clarification and request my own request. I did pre-consult with the city regarding the streetscape character in March 2019. When my first application for building permit was made for all the renovations for the house, including the internal work, rear addition, and the secondary dwelling unit and garage. At that time, it was communicated to me that the streetscape character was not required for my secondary dwelling unit and garage, and only the rear setback variance was required. At that time, I decided to remove the secondary dwelling unit and garage from my plans to be able to proceed with the work on the rest of the house. I submitted my minor variance application for the secondary dwelling and garage based on these requirements on December 15, 2020. And the application was deemed complete on January 27, 2020 and scheduled for today's hearing. As a precaution, I also submitted building permit application on December 22nd. And following review, the zoning planning examiner did not identify any additional variance outside of the setback and cleared my deficiency letter on January 14th. On February 9th, which is only last week, I was advised that by the planning reviewer that there is a possible issue with the new bylaw 2020-289, which was passed by council on October 15, 2020. However, it is currently under appeal and not available online. Following the review of the bylaw and consultation with the city and my lawyer, I was advised that my best course of action is to comply with the bylaw. And as such, I submitted the streetscape character to the city yesterday. I also understand that it's likely that it will result in additional variance being required.
All right.
Given that I feel that the process, from the process perspective, I've done everything correct at this point, but wasn't provided correct information or advice when the application was screened and by the zoning examiner, I would like to ask the committee to help prioritize my application such that I don't lose another 2 months due to the adjournment. My plan was to start construction in early April and complete it by the end of August before the school starts. So another 2 months will push it back way into December. So I hope the committee understands the situation, allows me to reschedule this hearing to the next available date, subject to notice requirements per Planning Act.
Well, you've heard the planning staff say that they need a copy of or they need a streetscape character analysis, which you provided, correct?
Correct. I submitted that yesterday.
That's in their hands, but that there also might be further variances, and that's, the identification of variances. That means, quite frankly, that means a recirculation.
I understand. I understand that. I'm just hoping that we can adjourn it to the next possible date, whatever it's required for the notice to.
Quite frankly, upon reviewing this application, several of the members of this panel, looking at section 133 of the zoning bylaw, which deals with secondary dwelling units, and in particular, part 2, sub 4, which states that a secondary dwelling unit is permitted, provided it only exists along with and must be contained within the same building as its principal dwelling unit. That is not the case with your application. You're extending your footprint and asking to have an SDU.
I have to, given the chair's comment, I have to review it with my planner. I was advised that my planning application is consistent with the zoning bylaw.
Mr. Wilder, have you ever comment on this?
Yes, I believe, unless the Committee of Adjustment Planner tells me otherwise, I believe that secondary dwelling units, regardless on the main floor and the basement, whatever, the intent was to have them confined to the existing structure, to the existing house. The intent was not to have any, not to have any expansion to the existing structure, that a walk-by would not create any visual changes to what was currently on the property. So perhaps the Committee of Adjustment Planner can correct me if I'm wrong.
The Adjustment Planner is probably going to have to take a look at the application again. Anyway, Mr. Mraz, I think it's probably best if we adjourn this sine die, which means we can still deal with this fairly early on if these issues are resolved quickly. Mr. Wilder, again. Go ahead, Mr. Wilder.
What I would suggest as well, Mr. Morrows, is as you can see, there were a number of concerns raised by this application. As you may have heard if you were listening in from a previous application, we encourage applicants to consult, regardless of the nature of the variance. We encourage applicants to consult with neighbors. In this case, I believe there's comments from the community association as well regarding the design. In fact, should you wish to proceed with this, regardless of my earlier comment, I would advise that you might want to meet with some of the residents, or your, if not yourself, your planning consultant. I would encourage your consultant to perhaps arrange a meeting or somehow meet with those concerned individuals.
Thank you, Mr. Wilder. All right, so I think the best course of action is an adjournment sine die, and hopefully we can, or everything can be resolved in a relatively quick fashion, and you won't be delayed too much further in your project. Anyway, all in favor of adjourning this application, sine die. Right, the application is adjourned, sine die. Thank you very much. We will now move on to the regular part of the hearing. And as I mentioned at the beginning in my opening comments, the first application we'll be dealing with today is item 10 on the agenda, which is 961 Beaudry Street, and that is because we have simultaneous translation for several residents on that street. So this is an application to permit reduced lot widths and lot areas, proposed to demolish the existing dwelling and construct a two-story semi-detached dwelling. And the agent for this application is Mr. Robinson. Robinson, welcome.
Hello.
I'm going to have to administer the oath. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing and clearly visible and legible during the entirety of that time?
I do swear that to be true.
All right, Mr. Robinson, if you'd like to make your presentation, please.
Yes. Thank you very much. This is an application for minor variances for the property at 961 Beaudry, which is on the left-hand side of the map image in front of you. It is the property with the purple circle. The application is for two related minor variances. It's to build a semi-detached unit on the property. And it requires a variance from a lot width of 9 meters to 7.62 meters and a related lot area variance from 270 square meters per side to 231 square meters per side. Okay. The map is of the area, the neighborhood. The subject property is in purple. Existing semis are in a pink or magenta tone. Recently approved semis by the Committee of Adjustment are shown by red circles. One of those is on Eve Street, where the lot width was 7.55 meters, and the lot area was, I think, about 250 square meters. And then on the south side of Fullerton, just east of Lola, there was another reduced area and reduced lot width semi-approved in 2019. Similarly, 7.9 meters in width. And then all the blue circles are also semis that exist that have less than 9 meters of frontage. Next slide, please. This is the survey plan of the property. There is a single family home on the property. There are single family homes to the north and south and east and west of the property. So as indicated, the proposal is to build a semi-detached unit on the property with variances from 9 meters to 7.62 meters and lot area from 270 square meters to 230.9 square meters. The property is 15.24 meters or 50 feet by 30.32 meters. So approximately 100 feet in depth and an area of 461.9 square meters. Next slide, please. This is a blow up of the rear of the property and its survey plan. There is an easement, and it is on the north side of the subject property. It's 1.22 meters or 4 feet in width. And then it wraps around to the rear of the property, and it's twice as wide there. So it's 2.44 meters or 8 feet in width. There is a similar width easement on the south side of the property that is immediately to the north. So there are, in total, there's an 8-foot hydro easement there. And then there is a 4-foot or 1.22 meter easement at the rear of the property, which is to the east on Eve Street. Along the property to the rear is the actual overhead wires, and they are shown on the enclosure, the enlargement of the survey plan here. There are some encroachments onto the easement now on the subject property, and upon construction, those will be removed. Next slide, please. This is the proposed site plan. So it's got a front yard that's in line with the adjacent properties, which is 5.89 meters. The side yards are 1.52 meters or 5 feet. That is compliant with the zoning. The zoning provisions are for a 1.2 meter side yard setback on any one side, or a total of 3 meters in total. So we're proposing 1.52 meters on either side. The rear yard setback is 8.53 meters, which is compliant with the bylaw for this area. And the building height is 7.56 meters, which is less than the maximum building height, which is 8 meters. Okay. Next slide, please. These are the elevations. Top left is the front or the west elevation of the property. So each unit will have a single car garage. And the 2 doors to the units are in the middle of the building. On the top right elevation is the south side, so looking from the property to the south, with the street edge would be on the left, and the rear of the building would be on the right. And then at the bottom left of the screen is the rear elevation, and at the bottom right of your screen would be the elevation from the north side, with the street side being on the right-hand side of the image. So as you can see, they've got peaked roof and extensive windows on the front, and the sides of the building are fairly similar to one another. Next slide, please. This is some photographs that I took. So the subject property is the middle image. The image on the left shows the majority of the subject property, and then it also shows the south side of the building immediately to the north. And then the image on the right shows the south half of the existing building and the property to the south, and they have a detached garage and their driveway closest to the mutual side lot line. Next, please. This is a view in the rear of the property. As you can see, there's the garage that I mentioned that does have that does encroach onto the easement at the rear of the property, and then those 2 sheds are also in the rear. And I believe the shed on the far left is on the easement, so that would be removed. And one of the over the last few days, I did speak with the property owner to the rear, and I believe he may be participating in this. And we discussed issues that he's raised related to drainage and retaining wall, and fencing, and also any tree removal. So I have discussed those items with him.
And come to any conclusions or any agreements on those items?
In terms of the retaining wall, and as a result, it's related to grading, I indicated to the gentleman that any drainage patterns that exist today that send any drainage from this property onto his property are going to be changed as a result of this, and that in today's design standards, we have to have this property self-contained in terms of drainage. This area, from what I understand, was built or originally built in 1957 when there weren't the standards that we have today. So I've indicated that a grading and drainage plan would have to be approved by the city building department before we can proceed. And if a retaining wall is required, then that would be done. But otherwise, we would be creating a high point along the property edges, and any drainage would be self-contained. I have reached out to Hydro Ottawa to see if they would permit a fence along the rear property line. That would be our client's preference. I have not heard back from them to date, but the back 8 feet or 2.44 meters of the property are on a hydro easement. So I'm not aware if we can put a fence there or not. There is I believe, a chain link fence there that's been up there a long time. And any trees that are on our property that overhang onto his, we've indicated we would trim back. But the survey plan indicates that the 2 biggest trees that are along that rear lot line are actually on the property of the adjacent property owner. They're not on our client's property. And that gentleman has indicated to me that he quite often has the undergrowth and the small trees that grow back every year. He has them trimmed back so that they don't interfere with his backyard too much. But there are 2 large trees in the rear area there, but according to the survey plan, they are on the adjacent property owner.
The property owner to the north or the south?
I'm sorry?
North, the south, or directly behind?
Behind.
Okay. All right.
Next slide, please. This is a property that I showed on the map originally. This was approved by the committee in 2016. On the photo on the left, it's a semi as well. It's on a corner lot, 935 and 937 Eve. The the photo on the left shows 937. And then the other photo shows 935, the side view of that, because the driveways are on different streets. That was approved by the committee in 2016 with lot frontages of 7.55 meters and lot areas of 223 and 243 square meters. So those are recently approved and in the general neighborhood examples of semis that have been approved in this same zone with reduced lot frontages and reduced lot areas. Next slide, and I believe that's the last. Thank you. This is the other recently built example. This is at 362 and 366 Fullerton. These semis have been completed. They were approved by the committee in the spring of 2019. Lot widths of 7.92 meters and lot areas of 241 square meters. And so there is another example of a recently approved semi in this same zone with reduced lot frontages and lot areas. Thank you very much.
Right, Mr. Robinson, I noticed that in the elevations, side elevations, that there are doors on those elevations. Are those doors for a potential secondary dwelling unit, or are they doors into the basement or the garage? Or
they are for a secondary dwelling unit, and the secondary dwelling units are approximately 445 square feet in size.
And they'll be in the basement?
Yes.
Of both units? Okay.
Yes.
All right. And those SDUs will meet bylaw requirements?
Yes.
Okay. I note that there's well, I think you've answered most of the objections from the neighbors. You've had a conversation with the neighbor behind, and they are satisfied. with your?
He seemed to be,
Okay.
but yes, and we have over the weekend, the owner's real estate agent spoke. I briefed them, and they spoke in French with the property owner immediately to the north and explained the setbacks and where the building would be located and so forth. So I think one of the things that they wanted assurance of is that there would be a 4-foot separation between the side lot line and the new building, and the distance separation between the side lot line and the building is actually 5 feet or 1.5 meters.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Robinson. Mr. Wilder, you had a comment?
Yes, Mr. Robinson. You showed us examples over on Eve around the corner. One of them is a corner lot. But for Beaudry Avenue, this will be, from what I can make out, the first such demo and redevelopment on Beaudry, which is pretty a low profile street with more singles than semis, from what I can make out as well. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Right. Jeez. And the intention here is what, to one severed to sell each half, or are they going to be basically, I gather obviously the secondary dwelling units may well be rental. Will each half be sold, owner occupied, or this will be a complete rental project? And then any idea what your client has planned?
The intent is that the owners are to live in one side of the building and that the other side would be rented out, but there will be likely a severance application at a later date.
At a later date, right, of course, tax. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Any other members of the committee have questions or comments? Mr. Robinson, you're aware of Hydro Ottawa's comments regarding satisfying offset clearances?
Yes, I am.
And as you said, you're pursuing with them the possibility of putting a fence?
Yes.
At the rear?
Yes.
But if they say no, you also have the option of putting the fence on the edge of the easement, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Which would serve the same purpose, but loses, then the neighbor loses they lose it, what, 8 feet of rear yard?
It would be realistically, the usable area of the rear yard would be 8 feet shorter than if it could be put on the lot line.
Okay. All right. Well, hopefully Hydro says yes.
Okay.
All right. So, thank you for your presentation. I don't think there are no conditions that are
Excuse
required.
me, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I believe Ms. McLean had her hand raised.
Oh, didn't see that. Sorry, Ms. McLean.
It's okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just have a question for planning. Given that this is an R2 zone, and this seems to be the first request to develop substandard lots in the zone, can you just reiterate why the department has no objections, what your thinking was when you were evaluating this?
Apologies, Ms. Vakola seems to be having some technical issues, but I can take that one. In terms of proceeding with the request to vary on lot size, ultimately, when we're talking about an R2 zone, the proposed development type is permitted fundamentally in the description of the zone. So they are entitled to seek lot size variances, and we're obligated to assess those requests on their merits.
And if you could just explain your rationale for having no concerns with the reduction in the lot area and lot width.
I'm sorry, I'm consulting off screen with Nicola, who did the review. She's indicating to me that the setbacks are met, notwithstanding the deviation from the lot size requirements, which as a general rule for our review, if an application is, or sorry, the proposal is capable of meeting the other setbacks requirements indicated in the zone, generally speaking, that's an indication to us that the proposed development is not oversized for its lot, and that it has been scaled down to a degree appropriate for the lot at hand.
I'm going to maybe suggest that, lot size in and of itself can, depart from the existing lot fabric in the area. So we have a street here that's full, I'm going to say 50-foot lots or in that vicinity. And even though the built form is in compliance with the bylaw, it can have adverse impacts on the neighbors, on the characteristics of the neighborhood. So I'm just wondering if, and I'm not sure if the applicant has demonstrated that the proposed development is compatible. We were seeing a street of single family dwellings on these lot sizes, and all of a sudden in the middle of the lot, we're going to see this new semi-detached dwelling on smaller lots. So I'm just struggling with that issue.
Mr. Robinson?
Thank you. As indicated by Mr. Nadeau, we have designed the building to meet or exceed the remainder of the performance standards, such as building height. We are less than the building height. We are exceeding the side yard setback to the neighbor to the north, who has indicated that they would like the minimum separation to be provided. We are providing for that or in excess of that. The rear yard, we are meeting those requirements. The block or this block of Beaudry is single family homes. Some of them are 1-story, some of them are 2-story. They are peaked roof in general, and that's the type of building design that we are going for. We did send the drawings ahead of time to the community association. They indicated that they liked the design of the building. They liked the fact that it was not a multi-number of steps raised above the street, like some of the semis that they've seen in the Overbrook Community Association. They like the peaked roof, and they like the amount of windows that are facing the street to give visibility, a two-way visibility between the building and the street and the building. So those things have been taken into consideration, and we've designed a building that, other than the lot width and the lot area, it is compliant, and the zoning for this area, this street and streets to the east and northeast are all in the same zone. And it is true that most of the properties on Beaudry are 50-foot lots, and we've tried to design a semi that would fit other than the lot width and the lot area.
Thank you. Very briefly, the 4 tests.
Okay, the 4 tests of a minor variance from section 45(1) of the Planning Act. The variances are to maintain the general intent and purpose of the official plan and the zoning bylaw, desirable for the appropriate development of the land and building, and are minor in nature. This is a permitted use of the property, and the neighborhood does have semi-detached units and single-family homes, and we're building it in conformity with the performance standards for the zone, other than the lot area and lot width. And as a small-scale intensification on the property to a semi-detached building, the proposal is in conformity with the official plan designation for the lands and maintains the general intent and purpose of the official plan, which allows for a variety of ground-orientated housing forms. There are many properties in the neighborhood with the same lot width and similar lot area, and the zoning allows semis, yet the lot fabric consists of lots that are not wide enough or large enough in lot area for semis. The subject property has the front yard, rear yard, and interior side yard requirements that meet or exceed the setback requirements, and a building height that is less than the maximum permitted. In this regard, we've minimized the impact on surrounding properties, and the only variances being requested relate to the existing width and size of the lot. It's our opinion that the minor variances are proposed maintain the general intent and purpose of the official plan and are desirable for the appropriate development of the land and are minor in nature. It's a form of gentle intensification that will have a minimal impact on surrounding properties, and the form of development being proposed is permitted in the zoning for the property. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson. Any other comments from the members of the panel? Mr. Wilder? And Ms. Lukershaw. Can't hear you, Mr. Wilder. Mr. Wilder, you're muted. Mr. Wilder, you're muted.
Oh, sorry. Notice that Ms. Oakes wants to speak as well, but should we reserve on this one, Mr. Chair, or not sure how the other members feel?
Well, I'll put that to the vote in a moment. Ms. Oakes-Shaw?
I just wanted to advise you, Mr. Chair, that I lost my connection to the meeting for about a minute. I don't know if everyone did or if it was just me.
I didn't.
Okay, so in that case, maybe I just would look for guidance as to whether I would vote on this file or not. Thank you.
Okay. So, Mr. Wilder, would you prefer to reserve on this application?
How did the others feel? I can go either way, but I'd like to see how the other members feel.
Ms. McLean?
I'd like to reserve, Mr. Chair, please.
All right, I think we, Mr. Robinson, I think we'll reserve on this application.
Thank you very much.
And you'll have your decision in 10 days.
Thank you. Have a good afternoon. Thank you
very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay. That's number 10. All right. Next application on the agenda is item number 1, 499 Hilson Avenue. These are minor variances to permit increased building heights, individual single-car driveways, and attached garages for the construction of a new 3-story semi-detached dwelling. We have updated site plan and tree information report. And we also have a revised site plan, including corrected driveway widths. So on item number 1, I believe Ms. Hill is the applicant's agent. Ms. Hill.
Hi.
We have to do the declaration before you begin.
Okay, my client Christopher should do the declaration.
All right.
He's on the line here. Christopher, can you unmute yourself and put your camera on?
I can.
Mr. Watchorn, what's your address, please?
It's 499 Hilson Avenue.
Okay, thanks. All right. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing and clearly visible and legible during the entirety of that time?
I do.
All right. Thank you. All right, Ms. Hill.
Okay, thank you.
Proceed.
Okay, so the property is located on Hilson Avenue. I've put up this map to point out that it is abutting or rear abutting Iona Park.
Yep.
Next slide, please. Next slide, please. My clients own and live in the house that's on the site right now, which is the peaked roof house in the middle of this photograph. And you'll see that they're flanked on either side by new developments, a semi on either side. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Just another view of their house and the buildings on either side. To the right, you'll see it's a 3-story semi. On the left, it's a 2-story semi. Next slide, please. And both properties, either side of them, have garage doors to embedded garages. Before beginning design work on this project, obviously I talked over with my clients what they were looking to build, but before I rolled up my sleeves and got to work on it, we actually met with the surrounding neighbors. So the owners of the property individually invited surrounding immediate neighbors, those that had computers and were able to meet with us on Zoom. And they did make contact with some others who weren't able to communicate that way, but at least to keep them in the loop. So we met with 3 households from surrounding homes, 1 or 2 people on Zoom in each of those homes. Could I have the next slide, please? We presented some basic 3D massing here. So we showed them this image and a few more that I'll show you in a moment, diagramming the building that exists on either side of the property and the kind of volume that we were perhaps proposing to build in between, because we wanted to get their early input about 2 issues in particular: height and where to park cars. So we made it clear to them that this wasn't a design, this was just, we just kind of whacked in a building and pasted on some windows so that it would be something to talk about here. The image on the screen right now shows an example with front-facing embedded garages. Could I have the next image, please? We also showed them scenarios with carports, and we talked about a scenario with rear driveway, shared driveway to rear yard parking. We got some pretty consistent feedback from the group. They felt that the height was an appropriate transition between the 2 buildings. There didn't seem to be any concern expressed about the height that we proposed, and they felt very strongly opposed to rear yard parking and in favor of the embedded garages. The neighbor, particularly the neighbor to the north, favored a garage instead of a carport because she felt it would be tidier and nicer to view from her front entranceway. So next slide, please. There we go. So with those recommendations, we proceeded with our design work. This is the site plan for our proposal. We're proposing a semi-detached dwelling with an embedded garage on each side. The building is the same length as its neighbor to the north, approximately, and meets the setback requirements. We are requesting a variance to allow additional building height and a variance to allow garages in the front face of the building. Next slide, please. So this is the building that we've designed for the location. And so you'll see that the front facade is staggered a little bit to give it some relief. It's different on the 2 sides to add interest. The roof line, the main roof line, is set at the 2-story height. And then there's a 3rd-story portion of the building that's in a gable at the front of the building. Next slide, please. The 2nd floor gable is inset on the 2 sides and also pushed back from the front face of the building below so that it is visually diminished. And this was done in order to create a transition between the height on the right of the building and the height that exists on the left of the building. Next slide, please. This is the front and rear elevations. So they're obviously drawn very flat, so you can't really perceive what's in the foreground and what's in the background. So I'll go to the side elevation. And if you look on the left-hand side of this drawing, you can see the 3rd floor gable is set back from the face of the building below. It's also set in on the sides. Also at the back of the building, there isn't a third floor. So on the back, if you were to stand in the park or in the rear yards neighboring, it seems to be a two-story building. And it's only at the front where we're making the transition between the two existing building heights that we have that gable. So I'll just, before I move on with the other points, I'll just review the 4 tests with respect to height. The minor variance that we're requesting is to increase from a 2-story height to a 3-story height, but keep in mind that that's only in that front portion and it's within that gable that is inset. So minor in nature, given its location and the way it's inset, yes, it is minor in nature and in impact. Appropriate and desirable. It's desirable to transition. So, you know, luck would have it that we end up in between 2 quite dissimilar heights, and a transition between them is actually more comfortable than just doing one or the other. So yes, very appropriate. In keeping with the purpose of the bylaw, the height limits in the bylaw, generally speaking, are in order to enforce and ensure a certain compatibility of new development with existing development. And so again, there we're complying with the intent of the bylaw. And the OP refers very directly to that issue of transition. So we're meeting that intent for transition of height. I'll move to the next slide, please. I'm going to speak now to the location of driveways and garages. So the bylaw requires that, or only permits garages, embedded garages or carports in the front of buildings if it is the dominant pattern in the surrounding group of houses. And so the next slide, please. We've mapped the existing context. Next slide. Right, that was my next slide. Sorry. Okay, next slide. There we go. We've mapped the existing context so that in blue you see all of the houses in this immediate surrounding that have an embedded garage. The subject property is that diagonally hatched property in the center of the image. And then those properties that have a detached garage are in pink. Properties with the carport are in yellow. So really what I see when I look at this map is quite a mix in the neighborhood. The dwellings that are included in the streetscape character analysis are the ones to the generally to the to the northwest of the subject property. And that combination of lots didn't produce the numerical value that would signify under the zoning that we are permitted an embedded garage or carport. However, when you look at the mix in the neighborhood, I think it's easy to see that it is in the character of the neighborhood that some of the units do have embedded garages. Could I have the next slide, please? And certainly when we talk to neighbors, the neighbors are very much aware of that mix that's in their neighborhood. They didn't seem to particularly favor the carports that are in their neighborhood. And they really did favor the embedded garage, particularly given that the proposed building is right in between 2 other buildings that have embedded garages. So the sense was that the numbers game of the streetscape character analysis perhaps didn't hone in on the site-specific character relationships that seem to be most obvious when you just look at the development in its immediate context. Next slide, please. And the impact of the carports there, you can see the proximity to the front doors on either side. And so that was not a favored solution. The zoning compliance solution here would be rear yard parking with a shared driveway. Neighbors felt strongly against that because of the rear condition abutting the park. That's a really well-loved park. It's really well-used park, and people were just very put off by the idea of having cars in a backyard anywhere close to that park. What's more, if we went with that scenario, we would be paving over about 40% of the lot, whereas this proposal paves less than 10% for driveways. And to put that in the context of the existing situation, the existing driveway is just over 10% of the lot paved for the existing driveway. So we feel like this is a solution that it's desirable to neighbors. It's a responsible environmental choice in terms of the amount of pavement, and it just makes sense given the location of the park. Next image, please. This is a picture just along the street from them that characterizes the real mix of parking solutions in the neighborhood. And next slide. The next slide is an image that just shows the two examples of garage and carport that people are familiar with. It's a little bit further from the site, but you can see how they tend to be used differently, and the carport tends to have storage in it, which is less favorable to neighbors. So next image, and I'll come back to the 4 tests with respect to the choice of where to put cars on the site. But I'm just going to touch on a couple other issues first. So in that consultation, it came to light that there was concern from our northern neighbor about the proximity or the location of windows inside walls. So this is an image. We went to site and located all of the windows on our neighbor's side yard, and they're shown lightly in gray dashed lines. And then when we designed our side wall, we tried to orient the windows so that we weren't overlapping their windows. You can see they have a lot of windows. So then our clients went with this drawing or drawing similar to this to the neighbors and talked it over. And we've come up with this layout that everybody seems to be happy with. Next slide. And I'm going to talk about the tree next. So the front yard tree has been an issue of concern. The original design with driveways on the outside rather than paired in the center of the lot was designed on the outside because the owners of the property loved their tree. The neighbors love their tree. If you drive by, you'll see that there are always kids' things playing around the tree. There's a fort around the tree right now. And so we originally designed the property to maintain the tree and protect the tree. And then there's been a little flurry of activity over the last few days with concern about the tree. And the way the tree is a challenge because it is a very aggressive kind of tree when it comes to its rooting structure. But we seem to have come to a good place now where we have a tree report that has been submitted to you that proposes the retention of the tree and some guidelines for how to keep that tree safe and healthy, including hydro backing along the driveway edges during excavation, digging trenches in order to put the services in, but getting those trenches at a distance from the tree, sealing and cleaning root ends with beeswax, angling the excavation in order to maintain a slope that maximizes tree preservation, etc. And I understand you have a copy of this report now. So, given all of these attention to the various details of context, I'm going to review the 4 tests with respect to the garages. So minor in nature. Is it minor in nature to ask for variance to locate cars on site in embedded garages as opposed to rear yard parking with a shared laneway? And yes, absolutely. In the context of a neighborhood that has quite a mix of different parking solutions, for us to choose one of the mix seems relatively minor to me. Appropriate and desirable, according to the neighbors, yes. In keeping with the purpose and intent of the zoning bylaw, that's a tricky one because the bylaw isn't 100% clear about its intention in locating cars. But we do know from other parts of the zoning bylaw that the bylaw does intend to have less paving and to put an emphasis on landscaping and to preserve trees. So we are certainly doing all of those things. In keeping with the purpose and intent of the official plan, absolutely. So the intent of the official plan is to, the plan has many clauses that encourage redevelopment that's in the character of existing development. And as you can see from the 3D image, the location of those garage doors certainly looks to be in character with the existing development. So I will stop there. Oh, no, lastly, I need to withdraw our request for a variance with respect to the driveways themselves. So we had a third variance requesting permission simply to have the driveways on this lot width, but that was an error, and I apologize for that. We are zoning compliant in that respect. We put in our application at a point when the bylaw was being changed and wasn't updated on the website yet, and I guess the city was planning to make a change about width and driveways, but then didn't follow through with it. So long story short, we don't need that third variance.
So that's variance B is in Bob and E is in Edward, or to be deleted?
Ooh, I don't have that piece of paper in front of me.
Well, one is 1/2 permitted individual single car driveway width of 2.75 meters on a 6.1 meter wide lot, whereas the bylaw prohibits individual single car driveways on lots of 7 meters or less in width.
That's correct. That's the one we deleted.
So both of those, they both read the same. So
yes.
we're deleting variance B and we're deleting variance E. So we're left with 4 variances. The building height variance and the attached garage for each side of the semi.
That's correct.
Okay. The department had some concerns regarding this application. Can we have someone from planning articulate those, please?
Hello again. This is the planning department trading computers because we are continuing to have technical issues. With regard to the concerns expressed by the department on this application, in a general sense, this is a rare case where the builder and the community have, arrived at a mutually agreeable proposal. So, in that sense, it gives comfort to staff in terms of the general design. With regard to the tree, we have been satisfied that the appropriate measures will be taken to retain it. And then the only outstanding concern had to do with the proposed driveway width, which partially arose out of the complications arising from the shift from one bylaw to new infill provisions, which are currently under appeal. At any rate, we flagged the issues to the applicant, and they have revised their materials accordingly. As such, staff is prepared to state no concerns.
Thank you, Mayor. Michelle, you understand that there are several residents who have had concerns regarding garages and regarding building heights. You saw those?
Yeah, I did see those. It's unfortunate that those individuals didn't contact us and weren't part of that that consultation. We also did circulate letters after we completed our design work. We circulated letters again to surrounding neighbors, quite generous distribution to surrounding neighbors, and proposing a meeting or offering that people call us if they had questions, and nobody did. So those two people who wrote letters are further afield.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Ms. Hill. Mr. Wilder? You're muted, Mr. Wilder.
Sorry. You realize, as you state in your rationale, that zoning has recently been revised such that development on this property is limited to 2 stories. I'm still not convinced that you really need that additional height of 2.5 meters. I realize I've seen your design. We're talking another almost 8 feet over what's permitted on the roof line. Explain to me again, what does that gable achieve? Does it provide additional living space, or is it just something for design purposes? Because to be honest with you, looking at the rest of the street, I don't really see the need for that height increase. I'm sorry.
It does contain living space that's more narrow than the living space below, because the gable is set in from the sides and the front. But it, to my mind, it facilitates that visual transfer of height. If we just go right down to the 2 stories from the 3 stories beside it, we don't have that that gentle transition. I consider the transition to be more desirable.
I appreciate that. It's more a design, but looking at the rest of the street, notwithstanding what's right next door in terms of the transition, looking at the profile, frankly, you know, and looking at what the intent was with the change in the zoning, I still don't see, you know, the need somehow, if you can accommodate that space that gable at the front of the building provides in another form, to be honest with you, where you don't have to, you can keep, say, 8 meters, 9 meters, why you have to go to 10.5 meters? Again, there are ways to design this so that you can still accommodate that additional space, I'm certain, without having to need that additional height. Thank you.
If that is true, Mr. Wilder, and respectfully, the official plan does call for transition.
Any comments, other members of the committee? Ms. McLean?
Could you just confirm for me that the would the height of the slope portion of the roof meet the bylaw?
The main peak. Ooh. I
thought I heard you say that the variance for the height was related solely to the gable, but I just wanted clarification on that.
You know what? I can't confirm that. If it doesn't, it could be tipped a little bit more so that it does, but you certainly wouldn't be able to perceive the difference from any viewpoint apart from a rooftop. So I'm sorry I don't have that answer handy, but certainly it could, if it doesn't, it could simply by angling down a little bit more. But again, if you're a pedestrian in any location around, you wouldn't be able to perceive the difference.
Okay, thank you.
So, Sharon?
Thank you. Ms. Hill, I agree with Mr. Wilder about the height. I find the design appears to be very imposing. And I'm just wondering if you have any additional images you can show us with a wider context on the street in terms of looking at the height of the various builds.
I don't have that handy. If we went back to the slide images of the street, I think you do pick up a little bit more on either side of in the photos. Would it be helpful to go back to those at the beginning of the slideshow?
Sure.
I think it would be helpful if we had a really wider view, a much wider view, to get some additional context.
So we'd need to go to the beginning of the slideshow. Okay, so this one's pretty good. So you can see the height of the existing house, which is quite a tall house. And it's one of the older buildings in the neighborhood, so it's not unique in its height. On the left-hand edge of the image, you see a two-story building. Oh, if we could go back to that one. A two-story building with a barn-shaped roof. So it's actually a little bit taller as well than the semi that's immediately to the north of the proposed site.
Mm-hmm.
And then if we go forward a couple of slides, maybe we'll see a bit more. There we go. So you see down the street the mix. So if you look at the existing house, again, it's a 3.5-story house, a 2.5-story house, which is quite comparable to what we're proposing. If you go down the street 1, 2, 3, 4 houses, you come to another older home that's the 2.5-story variety. So it's certainly not a bungalow neighborhood. It's a mix.
Okay, thank you.
So I'm just looking at Google Maps and I noticed that there's some there are 3-story dwellings on the street, as well as 2-story dwellings. Mr. Wilder, again.
Again, Ms. Hill, I'm looking up the street. I hear what the chair says, but I'm looking next door. It's flat. It's flat. I don't see a transition there. Looking up the street, I see the gable. I see the barn-shaped roof, but it's just fractionally above it. And then further down the street, I see just one example of another 2.5. And looking way down the street, again, I see, more of the more lower profile roofs. I just think this, I wouldn't really call this a transition between what's on either side and further up the street. I mean, frankly, I think the roof line could be designed, and I've seen this from my experience over this several years on committee, that you could change the roof line to accommodate, I don't know how many additional square meters of living space is going to be in that almost 8 feet, 9 feet, whatever. Anyway, I'm still not, I guess, sold that this profile is necessary to achieve that additional living space. Thank you.
Mr. Nato, you had some comments?
Yes, at least, Mr. Chair, in the sense that I can provide an answer to a question that was raised earlier about the height of the principal sloped element of the roof. Looking at the frontal elevation, it appears that the underside of the roof truss has been labeled as 328 some inches, which based on my quick conversion works out to approximately 8.3 meters. Now, based on the bylaw definition of building height, this is not exactly how we would measure it. We would typically go from the the eaves to the peak of the roof. And in this case, the underside of the roof truss appears to be higher than that point. All to say, this is it's reasonable to estimate that the main part of the roof could be made to fit within the 8-meter height limit.
So the 10.5 meter height is because of the design of the front of the building on the 3rd floor.
That's right.
All right. Okay. All right. Any other comments from members of the committee? I think we have several members, Ms. Hill, who are who have issues with this application, and I think, quite frankly, that it's best for us to reserve and issue our decision in 10 days. Before we discuss that, are there going to be any secondary dwelling units in these either of these semis?
No.
No. Okay. Ms. McLean.
Mr. Chair, could I just point out that the planning report had requested a condition on an agreement pertaining to a tree information report, and then it's just committee's general policy not to impose conditions on minor variances other than to tie any approval to the plans that are before the committee. So in this instance, I would not be supporting a condition on the agreement with the city. I also am a little concerned that the agreement talks to changes possibly that are made, and I wouldn't want that to occur after the committee has made a decision. So going ahead in the future, I would maybe support an adjournment so that the forestry staff and the applicant can sort out tree issues, and then when it comes to the committee, it's in a finalized plan and we know what we're approving and we understand the issues. So I'm just putting that on record, and I would agree to reserve on this as well.
And quite frankly, Ms. Hill, you've already come to an agreement with the city regarding the tree?
Yeah, and we have submitted the report since that comment was put on file. So it's irrelevant now.
Ms. McLean, we could eliminate the condition because it's already been met.
Yeah, I wouldn't be supporting the imposition of a condition like this on a minor variance, but I think the information may have come in as late as today, and I'm not sure if forestry's had a chance to review it. But I just wanted to note in future that I think that if there's discussion to be had, then that it would come as an adjournment, and when the committee is dealing with it, then on the merits, we would have the finalized proposal before us. Thanks.
Okay. All right, and with that, all in favor of just reserving on this application? All right, we'll reserve on the application, Ms. Hill, and you'll have our decision within 10 days. Thank you very much. The next application that we'll deal with today are items 2 and 3 on the agenda, 94 Henderson Avenue and 112 Osgood Street. These consents to subdivide the property into 2 separate parcels of land and propose to convey a portion of the property and create easements and rights of ways in favor of the abutting landowner to the southeast, known municipally as 112 Osgood Street, which contains the existing father and son's restaurant. And I believe the applicant's Mr. Bolduc is the agent for the applicant. Mr. Bolduc.
Yes, good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Members.
Give us your address, please.
I am Jacob Bolduc of Foten Consultants at 396 Cooper Street in Ottawa.
I'm going to have to administer the oath. Mr. Bolduc, do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing and clearly visible and legible during the entirety of that time?
I do swear this to be true, Mr. Chair.
All right. Please proceed, Mr. Bolduc.
Mr. Chair, I'm happy to provide a brief presentation. I did prepare some materials, but I can walk you through it very quickly or simply answer questions.
I think a brief presentation would be fine.
Okay, so this slide here, it shows the land ownership for the property. So Father and Sons is located on the western corner, highlighted in red. The University of Ottawa, through a series of strategic acquisitions, has acquired significant land holdings on this block, bordered by Osgoode, Henderson, King Edward, and Somerset. It's my understanding that circa 1990, the restaurant actually expanded onto a portion of the university's lands under some sort of previous agreement. And since that time, the restaurant has actually been trying to acquire this property, this portion highlighted with the red hatching from the university. Now, obviously, the university is not necessarily ready to sell lands that are part of their future master plan, which does extend east of King Edward. So as part of this proposal and the agreement that they have reached between the restaurant owner and the university, essentially they would be selling just the portion under the red hatching, and then they would receive first right of refusal on any future sales of the restaurant lands so that they could acquire more of the block to in line with their master plan. So we can flip to the next slide. So this is the draft reference plan, and I've color coded some of the major or the applications that are applicable today. So parts 2 and 6 are the two parts that are to be sold by the university to the restaurant. And as you can see by the existing building footprint underneath, this is for the portion of the restaurant that was already constructed, again, circa 1990. There is also a consent for easements application over parts 3, 4, 5, 7, and 8. The reason for that easement is that there is a fire escape that extends over the rooftop on parts 2 and 6, and then would go eastward down 7 and 8, and partially located on parts 4 and 5. And I do have a detailed plan on the next slide that could show that. But part 3 is actually the existing parking for the restaurant. We've been working with the university on this application for about 1.5 years, and there was some additional considerations that I guess I would raise to light. Initially, we had said, essentially, why not sell parts 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 2, 6? Why bother with the easements if you're going to acquire that first right of refusal in the first place? The reason for that is that part 3 measures exactly 8 meters, and that was determined because the master plan document from the University of Ottawa has a protected laneway requirement that goes through the center of the block. And it's essentially university's policy that they don't want to give up those lands for any reason at all. Therefore, we've limited the lands for sale to parts 2 and 6 and have elected instead for an easement over the remaining parts as indicated on this diagram. With respect to the variances, there are 2 locations. This map only highlights one, my apologies, but one is to effectively reduce the existing side yard setback that is highlighted by the red box. We're proposing to reduce that to 0 because of the existing Schedule 232 would allow for such a reduction if the university were to acquire these lands in the future. At the moment, the required setback is 3 meters. In addition to that, we need a variance over parts, well, essentially the fire escape over parts 6, 7, 8, 4, and 5. And actually, we'll move to the next slide. I might be able to describe it a little bit better. So you'll see that the fire escape that is located next to the, or on top of the addition that was created in 1990 actually snakes down and then further left towards where I've indicated parking lot. So it's sort of L-shaped. And the diagram on the bottom, which I flipped around to sort of mirror this particular perspective, shows the fire escapes stretching over parts 5, 4, and 8. And the reason a variance is required is because that fire escape would stretch over the restaurant's property that they're acquiring, being part 6, onto the existing university property. And the fire escape is not allowed to encroach further than a certain distance to the property line. Since it surpasses those property lines, essentially an easement is required to permit a setback of 0 for that fire escape. That's a brief overview. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions from the panel on this? Any concerns? Ms. McLean?
Could you just confirm, I think you indicated in the cover letter, but the Father and Sons restaurant is the same zoning as the lands that are being acquired from the university?
Partially, yeah. The lands that are being acquired from the university are the same zoning, being the I2E zone. There are other zones that apply to the remaining portion of the university lands because it does occupy the majority of that block. But the portions being transferred from the university to the restaurant through the lot line adjustment are within the same zone. Yes.
Yeah.
McLean, you had some questions regarding the need for an encroachment agreement, I believe.
Nothing, not on my end, Mr. Chair.
Not on this item. Okay. We don't need an encroachment agreement registered on title. I don't believe. Okay.
I can speak briefly to that, Mr. Chair. We have been working with the team of solicitors at the University of Ottawa to identify what kinds of agreements will be required for this. There's a mutual interest in both parties to get this sorted, obviously, as soon as possible. So that process has already been started at the university, and we're confident they'll be able to sort it out.
Okay. All right. So the only condition that I see on here for the consent is a lot line adjustment condition. Are you familiar with that?
No, could you provide a little more detail, Mr. Chair?
Well, it's on our form. Perhaps Planning Department would like to comment on this. Mr. Neto?
Yes, my apologies, Mr. Chair. I had not seen the lot line condition being referred to. I don't believe that it was included as part of the staff report.
I can confirm that we did not receive this condition as part of the staff report.
Ms. McLean?
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Yeah, I'll let the Secretary Treasurer address it.
Yes, this is a standard condition that is imposed. It simply highlights the fact that no future conveyance is possible without the consent of the Committee of Adjustment. Just a standard condition under subsection 5012 of the Planning Act.
Okay, I understand. Thank you.
So we'll impose that condition on the consent. There are no conditions on the variances. The Planning Department has no concerns. Hydro has no concerns. I think we're fine on this. All right. No further questions from members of the panel. Are you prepared to vote on this? Okay. All in favor of this application? These applications, sorry. All right, the applications are approved. Thank you, Mr. Bolduc.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Have a good day.
Thank you. Okay. Next application we'll deal with today is item 4 on the agenda. 125 Zaid Eddy Private and 5 Booth Street. Consent for a lot line adjustment and to subdivide the property into 2 separate parcels of land, grant of easement, right-of-way, mortgage charge, maintenance, and joint use agreement and lease. It's proposed to reconfigure a development block to create a quote-unquote new lot consistent with the approved site plan. And there's one amendment to the application and the applicant indicating that the property is a subject of a site plan control application. And the agent on this item, I believe, is Ms. Bellinger.
Jake Ruddy in place of
Mr. Ruddy. Okay. All right. Welcome, Mr. Ruddy. You'll have to go through the solemn declaration. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing and clearly visible and legible during the entirety of that time?
Yes, I do.
All right, if you'd like to proceed with your presentation, please, Mr. Reddy.
I don't have a presentation prepared. The materials I received from the committee were no comments and no concerns from the committee, from hydro, from forestry, from the Rideau Conservation Valley. Essentially, the whole development has been master site plan approved, and we are now simply requesting a severance for a lot line adjustment. This is the wrong reference plan provided. There should be one specifically, a draft reference plan for this application. But in any event, if you, on this one, right by that compass sign, not this one as well. I'm not sure which other maps or plans you have on file or included with this application right now. Simply, if you want to go back to that other master reference plan, I can point out a few things for you. So this is the approved site plan. We can start with this one. This is the approved site plan that we're referencing in application number 2. Sure, we'll start with this one then, since we have it up. So if you look at part 19, right by the compass north symbol in the middle of the page, top middle, that part 19 is the subject of application 1, and that will be severed through a lot line adjustment and consolidated to part 17 that you see right beside it to the north, to the east, southeast. That's a simple lot line adjustment. That's the consent we're requesting in application number 1.
Okay.
Application number 2, it's not really clear on this master site plan, but it deals with part 18, 20, 21 that you see right here on this master plan. If you're to go to the next plan that you had up earlier, or if you have the draft reference plan that was submitted with the application. And so if we're going to use this plan here, you'll see block 211 on the east side of Booth Street in the red square.
Yeah.
So block 211, and then you'll see that's essentially parts 4, 7, and 12 as identified on the severance application number 2. And those are the parts that we're severing from the remainder of block 211 on the master site plan, which would include that Chaudière Island or Chaudière East private laneway, would also include the green lands to the north as well. You see it in that hatch and up to that red dividing line there. And so the application for application number 2, the purpose of it is to sever and simply adjust the boundaries of block 211 to conform with the approved site plan from what was previously approved as a development block.
Okay.
And those are the 2 purposes of these 2 applications.
All right. I believe Ms. McLean has some questions.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I found these very complicated. So please bear with me as I go through these. I'm going to deal just with some general questions and then go to each application. So have the blocks on the master plan been created in the registry system? I guess I'm confused about the part lot control and how that works.
Right. So we can only use part lot control if there's an underlying plan of subdivision. And we use that underlying plan of subdivision, plan 10, that goes back at least 100 years. We were able to use that to create, to input a reference plan on top of that and use those parts on reference plans to create individual development blocks. And that's what you see on part for block 211, for block 212, all different kinds of blocks in the Mississippi, Ontario plan of subdivision, essentially. And so what we're doing now is we had to create those blocks earlier on with just a general idea of where the lot lines would be. with the intent and the support of city planning that once we have actual site plan approved, we may have to readjust those boundaries to conform to what was approved with site plan for those individual blocks as they become developed lands.
But these blocks aren't created legally in the registry system yet, are they?
Yes, they would be. Yeah, they're all individual blocks pursuant to parts on a reference plan. They have their own parcel identification numbers.
So do you have a plan, I guess, that or something that shows the part numbers that pertain to each block? I guess the connection is this all under one ownership at the time? And how do we convey a piece of land from owner A to owner A? So is there an owner B in order to convey that little sliver called part 13?
Owner B would just be the owner of part 17 adjacent, who is the same owner. It's a simple lot line adjustment instead of a true conveyance. Although there will be a transfer and then an application to consolidate the pins.
But that it's the same owner. I mean, he owns all the land. He owns abutting land. So how do you convey from owner? Like normally when we do a lot line adjustment, there's an owner A and an owner B, and an owner A sells a portion to owner B. In this case, I don't understand how we can approve this this transfer in application number 1 to the same owner.
Right, we've had a similar situation with another development project of ours where we had same ownership and we went through part lot control exemption to have a lot line readjustment and then to consolidate. So then that lot line readjustment gets registered and then we consolidate the 2 parcels that was severed and the adjacent parcel under the same ownership.
So I guess that was another question I had. Why aren't you doing these applications through a realignment of the part lot control process? That was the initial process.
Right, that was the initial process. The reason why we're going through here, I believe, is because it was told to us this was the proper way to go through it, to go through the committee, because it's dealing with a part of a property instead of a whole parcel.
Yeah, I understand that, but I guess you've done it now through part lot control, and now so to me, it would be a realignment of the part lot control process. And I'm still not clear on whether you can convey from yourself to yourself and create that new lot line. But can I just clarify on that first application, when we say that part 13 on the draft 4R plan, which you indicated is the same as part 19, on the register plan, it's going to parts 16 and 17, and that's on the 4R plan 32359, is that correct?
Correct. Yeah, the master or the parcelization reference plan, yes.
Okay. And then let me just see. Can you show us the lands that are outside Plan 10, or are they not in front of us?
The lands outside Plan 10 actually includes Part 19. That's why it wasn't included in the parcelization in the first place. And that's why we have to come to the committee to get the consent to sever it and convey it over. Otherwise, we would have included it in the initial parcelization, but that's not part of the underlying reference or the underlying plan of subdivision.
Oh, so now I understand that you can't realign it through part lot control because it's not part of the
Correct. Sorry, I should have clarified.
Subdivision.
Yes.
Yeah, no, that's fine. So I'm still not sure how these blocks, so bear with me, just how these blocks on the master plan have been created legally, but that's a bit of a conundrum to me, but I guess, and the fact that you're conveying from yourself to yourself, or from the same owner to the same owner, I'm not sure about that. So on application number 2, the conveyance of parts 4, 7, and 12, can you just explain that? Is this a stratified severance?
Yes, it is a stratified severance.
So the garage, is been extended under the roadway. Can you show us how that severance is occurring? Is there the connection between the land under the surface roadway, if I understand it correctly, and the garage? What ceiling would it be?
Right. Well, if we have the draft reference plan, if you have that available in the materials, you can bring it on screen, or if you want to look at it in your papers, I'm happy to walk you through it.
I had a difficulty reading the draft reference plan and trying to find part 12 and how it works.
Yep.
Where the land is subdivided, because you're doing it in heights, I guess.
Right. We're requesting the consent both at grade and below grade for the parking garage.
Are they connected to any land? Are they connected to land?
The parking garage?
Well, the severance. I don't understand the severance itself. I guess we're severing under the road. So from some part of the road up is going to be road and owned by the common elements condominium.
Right.
And the land underneath the road is going to be owned by block 211.
Yep, correct. So if you're looking at the draft reference plan, if you have
Can we pull the draft reference plan up? Can we pull that up on the screen?
We do not have a copy of the draft reference plan. Would it be possible to have it emailed? If you have it.
I can email you right now, or if you want to bring up the that colored map that we referenced earlier.
Okay, just one moment.
And we did get the draft reference plan in our package. I'll just say that sort of.
Yeah.
So the other question I had, Mr. Reddy, is can you not go back through the part lot control process and do this adjustment?
No, I do not believe we can.
Why not?
Again, because we're dealing with parts of a lot. There's also a part lot or a road widening conveyance portion included in this as well through the city that we'll have to sever off as part of our application.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't follow you. Why you can't go back through the part lot control process and realign what you're asking us to do today?
To be honest, I don't have that answer with me. I was provided this information. I was not necessarily involved in this whole planning process, but I was told that through the committee of adjustment was the appropriate method to go through with this about this.
Our notice says, the application says it has frontage of so many meters on Zayde Eddy private. Is there no frontage on a public street up for this parcel that we're being asked to sever?
There would be frontage along Booth Street, especially with the requested road conveyance.
So I guess our notice didn't capture that perhaps. The other question is, if you declare a common elements condominium on the road that's to the north of block 211, does that effectively not sever your property? Can that not be used to create the lands underneath the road?
I'm not sure if it could be used to declare or sever the lands beneath the road because that condominium property is only at grade.
But can it be defined to, well, if it's only a grade, then where is the land underneath the road belong to?
It'll belong to block 211 owner.
So does the common elements condominium not then create that severance that you're asking us to create?
Well, block 211 has already been created essentially. And
how has it been created? I'm just going to stop you there. How has it been created? Is it been deeded over, or I'm just not clear on that?
So block 211 initially on this colored plan in front of us on the screen would run from the south of that block 211 there, right out to the northeast of the orange and straight up northwest along that property line to the red. And then following that red line to Booth Street, the Chaudière Bridge, and down. That's all right now, block 211, created under the parcelization transfer, creating all the development blocks.
So all of the land on the east side of Booth Street, you're saying that whole parcel, all those 4 colors or 5 colors are block 11?
No,
211?
just the east of Booth Street up to those colors, past the red and up to that. You can see it says block 212 in the lightish yellow and the orange. So that's where block 211 ends right now.
I'm totally confused here because there's private roads there, and so block 211 extends into the orange. Is that what you're saying?
No, it'll stop right at the orange. So right now, the entirety of block 211 right now consists of what you see is block 211 there.
Oh, great.
It consists of Chaudière East Private, that private roadway. It consists of that hatching to the north of that private roadway. And it consists of that white to the north of that hatching, up to the red line. That's all of block 211 right now as created under the parcelization transfer, which created each and one of these individual development blocks that you see on this plan in color. Is that clear?
I guess that's what I don't understand the parcelization transfer.
Right, so essentially all of this, everything you see in this red border, that was all one piece of land, one parcel, one pin. And so what our client did and what we did was, because there was an underlying plan of subdivision, we were able to create a master reference plan that would provide parts to create all of these individual blocks. So for instance, right now, block 211 is currently all those pieces of land that I identified is parts 18, 19, 20, 21 on that reference plan. And so that's the identification of block 211. And we were able to transfer those lands from self to self, therefore breaking up that massive block of property under part lot control and through a parcelization transfer. That permits us to, you can register a transfer from self to self under a part lot control exemption.
So then why do you need so you own the lands that the underground garage is on?
Yes.
So and you're going to declare a common elements condominium on the private road?
Correct.
So the common elements will be described as a certain, I don't know, part number, and it could have a depth on it. And so I'm not sure why you need the consent of the committee. And I guess we have difficulty with strata severances and how to deal with them, I guess.
Yeah, that's fair. And so the underground parking garage is only directly beneath this block 211, as you see. It does not flow north underneath the Chaudière East Private, and it stays within the revised approved site plan boundary lines of block 211, which you see in that dotted red line around block 211.
But you're asking us to create an ownership underground and a different ownership at the surface.
Correct.
Does that not automatically happen when you create the common elements condominium?
No, it would not, because there are still other blocks that you'd have to separate from the common elements condominium, or else the entirety of the remainder would become common elements condominium, and that's not the purpose of this, if that makes sense.
No, can you tell me that again?
Sure. So what's expected to become the common elements condominium is just that Chaudière East Private. If you see that there.
Yes. Yeah.
The lands to the north of that are supposed to remain green space. I don't believe they're supposed to be part of the common elements condominium. And then block 211 is supposed to remain a separate freehold parcel. And so if we create the condominium on just the Chaudière Island East, I believe we still have to create, sorry, it's very convoluted, because it's only going to be a condominium in the entirety of the project. So Chaudière West Private is also going to be part of the condominium, and basically every non-building common area of this entire development is going to be part of this Zibi Village condominium that has not been registered yet. And the intention is not to register that condominium until the very end, when all development blocks have been identified and rearranged and readjusted pursuant to approved site plans for each and every individual block. And so since we are not registering the condominium now, we cannot sever and readjust block 211 now as we require.
And why do you require? Why do you require it now and can't do it later under the other processes?
Because now we have approved site plan and we have to readjust the boundary line to remain compliant with that approved site plan.
And what boundary line are we readjusting?
Block 211. You'll see that dotted red line around it, or if you bring up the other approved site plan that was brought up earlier, you'll see the new approved boundary line.
But block 211 extends right to the river. Am I wrong there?
As of now, it does. And so the purpose of the application is to consent to sever block 211 within this specific area of the larger block 211 as identified on the specific parts on the draft reference plan.
And what does the remnant land look like then? Aside from the strata that I'm struggling with, what does the remnant land look? What are we creating, a remnant land of block 211 that what is what?
Yes, you're going to create a remnant land. So the green line here is the approved site plan for the new block 211 that is going to house the underground parking garage, which is placed directly underneath this at P1 at level A grade. And the remainder of it will consist of Chaudière East Private, and the lands to the north of that, which is going to be green lands and open park spaces and private walkways and pathways. And it is those open greenways, pathways, private walkways that will be incorporated into the common elements condominium that will be created at the completion of the building of the entire project.
So there's an extent of P1 and P2 levels that go to the blue line, and that's below grade. It's
complicated. Yeah, it's complicated to wrap your head around. I understand, but yes, that is below grade. And if you have I'm not sure if you have the draft reference plan in front of you or not, but the next time you take a look at it, the very far right, the big reference plan shown.
Yes.
Showing everything at grade.
Yes.
And the very far left, I believe, is showing everything below grade. And so you'll see number 4 on the draft reference plan is in the same place below grade and above grade.
What part number?
Number 4.
Part 4, okay.
And so you see the middle diagram on the draft reference plan. You'll see there that part 4 actually extends beyond the part 4 you see on the far right diagram being what's that grade, because the parking garage actually extends further north into the private roadway beneath the surface, below grade. Oh, here we go, the draft reference plan, perfect. Do you see what I'm speaking about here?
Yes, I do.
If that helps at all to understand the context of how these plans are read. And so if you look at the far right plan, which is at grade, you see part 4 and part 7 are included at grade to be in this new block 211. And you'll see in the middle diagram, part 4 is included in that diagram or included in that footprint at grade, but it also extends further north below grade. And it extends further north under Chaudière Private East which you see in part 3 on the far right plan. And if it's any help to see how far it extends into it, on the far right plan, you see a little rectangle or 2 small rectangles in part 4. And in part 10, it looks like.
Yes, yep.
Those are air vents that have to come out from the garage and come out at grade. And so that's why you're seeing those small part 4s on the grade plan on the far right, because they're also part of the parking garage coming up. Complicated and convoluted. I know it's not simple.
And part 12, I guess, which is the other part that I struggled to find, but eventually I think what is part 12?
Part 12 is on the far left diagram. You'll see a small sliver of land on the south. And that's just part of the boundary readjustment. Have you found that part?
Yeah, I see that part now, yeah. So why can't you do this through part lot control? The process you initially started with?
I believe the part lot control exemption bylaw has expired.
So if it's expired, you can't do any further conveyances, is that it?
Correct, unless you have to reapply for it.
Could go through and realign through a new part lot control?
You'd have to apply for a new exemption bylaw.
And could you do this through a plan of subdivision? If we found that it wasn't orderly in development of the land, could you go through a plan of subdivision for what you're asking us to do in application 2 today?
It would be extremely expensive and not cost effective for such a minor lot line readjustment, but technically, yes, you could, I believe, be able to.
And so I guess my final question is, let me just see here. In order for us to find that a plan of subdivision is not necessary, one of the criteria in 5124 is the dimension and shapes of the proposed lots. And I'm going to suggest to you that this is very peculiar. So can you just address that and help me out there?
I'm not sure what you mean by peculiar. We're simply breaking down what is already an approved development block approved by the city, approved by planning, and simply redesigning the lot boundaries of it to confirm or to comply with an approved site plan. So the site plan, the division of it, the shape of the new proposed block 211 lot has already been approved by planning.
And the legal descriptions for the lease lands and the mortgage lands would be 4, 7, and 12 on the draft 4R plan. Is that
correct?
Your understanding? Yeah. And there's a part 5 at the bottom of the plan. Does that relate to anything? It runs along the private street coming in off of Booth.
Right. That does not
doesn't figure into the.
Does not figure into block 211. No.
Okay.
That would remain part of the common element condominium that will be created in the future.
Well, thank you very much for your patience. I just needed
I know it's not the easiest. I'm trying my best.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any questions, comments, Mr. Wilder?
Yes, Mr. Reddy, I sort of confused the application that went to planning committee, or I guess last week, for the new 20+ story condominium tower. Which block on this master plan can you show me is a location of this condominium tower? Okay, just go back to the master plan.
I'm not sure exactly which one it is.
I can help you with that. I can help you with that one.
Go for it.
Yeah, so if you pull up the master plan. As part of the.
So I assume it's on Zadie Eddy private, am I correct?
No, it is not.
It's
No,
not.
it's on Milwaukee Private, which is, so it's block 206. So it's on the west side of Booth Street.
It's a block.
206. It's one of the orange.
One of the orange. I see.
It's
Okay.
an orange shape.
Okay. I understand that now. Okay. So it's in fact a separate parcel altogether then, is it not?
Yeah, it is. This application has no effect or bearing
Okay,
on that.
thank you. That's my question. So in terms of the common elements condominium, this is obviously a relatively new concept, obviously. I mean, it's so basically those properties that are going to be fronting on Zadie Eddy Private will ultimately it's a private road. When it's all built out, we'll all share in the maintenance of this private roadway. Is that correct?
Correct.
Under the condominium arrangement, under the condominium right?
Exactly. Each of these development blocks will buy into, quote unquote, and pay their proportionate share of maintenance, repair, quote unquote, common expenses to this condominium that manages and governs all of this open green space, private roadway, shared property between all of the other development blocks.
So that cannot be determined in terms of how it's going to be apportioned until all the blocks are complete, right? The development
Correct.
is complete on.
It's estimated right now, but it will be adjusted as we go along.
So now you just have an estimate. All right, thank you. That's my questions.
You're welcome.
Ms. McLean?
Sorry, one more question, Mr. Ruddy. The parcel, you said the parcelization plan creates the individual, I'm going to say lot lines between blocks?
Yes.
And you did that through part lot control?
Correct.
So you're allowed to convey from yourself to create the individual parcels?
Correct.
Sorry,
go ahead.
So if we had a plan that showed the lot lines, I guess, do we have a plan that shows the lot lines that were created by the parcelization plan?
Yeah, on that master site plan, on that master reference plan that was brought up earlier.
On the 4R, the registered 4R plan, is that what you're referring to?
Correct.
So I don't see any block. I guess the question is what part numbers belong to which of the 5 blocks, or the 1, 2, 3, 4 blocks?
Right. So on this plan here, block 211, as is now prior to any severance or any consent, is part 218, part 18, 20, and 21. That's all of block 211 right now. And part 19. Sorry, not part 19, my mistake. 18, 20, and 21 is block 211 as it's currently constituted. And so you will find in the registry office, block 211 is as described being parts 18, 20, 21 on 32359. And what we hope to convey with this is to create the new block 211 being parts 4, 7, 12 on draft reference plan. Then we'll get a remainder pin for the remainder of 2021 that's left over.
And what is 20 and 21?
20 and 21 will
That's the parkade sort of.
Partly of the Chaudière private roadway and green space, open pathways, bicycle pathways, walking pathways as of now.
Is that creating a new block then?
It will create a new parcel identification number. It'll create a new parcel of what the remnant now, what the severed or remainder land will be.
Yeah, it's not a block because the blocks represent buildings and future buildings. whereas that's meant to be a park, so it's called Union Park on our master plan.
Oh, I'm totally confused, but I'll leave it there. Thank you.
If it makes it any easier to try and understand how it all works, you can look at it just as a simple severance as well. In that if you take part without taking the strata portion, if you want to just look at it at grade, parts 4 and 7 are going to be severed, and you have your remainder lands, and all that we're doing as well is just including below grade the parking garage as part of the severed lands. So you're going to have your new severed pin and then your remainder pins. And so this part 18, 2021 is just going to be broken up into 2 separate parcels.
Thank you, Mr. Ruddy. Ms. Oak, Sharon, you had a comment?
Thank you. I just wanted to ask about the air vents that you mentioned. You said that they're at grade. And I was wondering if they are to be owned by the public or the condo corporation versus the owner of the parking garage.
No, we create those parts at grade in order to provide for an easement that allows for the exhaust to come out. So it will be, so the parts at grade are still going to be owned in the private road. They will be part of the condominium in the end, but those are shown simply to show where the air comes out is ventilated out from the parking garage at grade.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other comments, questions from members of the panel? I think we'll reserve on this this applicant or these applications, Mr. Ruddy, and you'll receive our decision in 10 days.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Yep. That's done. The next application to be dealt with is item 7 on the agenda, 111 Lees Avenue. Minor variances to permit a reduced easterly side yard setback for the existing dwelling to permit an increased projection into the rear yard for the existing decks and stairway, and increased projections towards rear and easterly side yards for the conversion of the existing 3-story detached duplex dwelling into a 3-unit dwelling. The renovations will include the construction of a new front-facing 3-floor escape balcony and a reduction in the size of the existing detached garage. And the agent for this application would be Mr. Pearson. Is he there? Mr. Pearson, your voice is muted. No, there. We have to go through the solemn oath or the declaration. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing and clearly visible and legible during the entirety of that time?
I do.
All right, could you give us your address, please?
I'm at 10 Reval Road in Nepean.
Okay. All right. If you'd like to give us a presentation on your application, please.
Mr. Chair, as you probably know, this is our second time at Committee of Adjustment. The first time we needed minor variances for lot area and frontage, which the committee approved. Since then, we've been advised that we require additional variances. And these mainly relate to the fact that the building is an old one and there are many pre-existing conditions with respect to the property line. So we're looking for a reduction of side yard setback from 1.2 meters to 0 meters, because that's the existing house. And to permit open stairways to project 7.355 meters into the rear yard and to be at 150 millimeters from the rear lot line and 0 meters from the side lot line. And thirdly, to permit a deck to project 2.77 meters into the rear yard and to be 0 meters from the side lot line. As I said, these are all as a result of existing conditions at the property. The house is already sitting on the property line or even marginally over the property line in some areas. And we are not actually changing the footprint of the house. And there is an existing fire escape stair at the back of the property, which we were informed does not have a building permit approval. But that was something that my clients, the owners, were not aware of at the time they purchased the property. So that's why we're coming back for minor variances related to those stairs and to the rear deck. And as before, we believe we meet the same 4 tests which are needed for the committee to consider the application. Nothing really has changed materially. There will be no change to the footprint of the main building. There is a small 3rd floor balcony, a fire refuge balcony, being proposed at the front facing the street, but it projects only, I believe, 1 meter from the house. And the existing garage at the back of the property will be reducing the size of that to then be without changing the footprint, or at least within the existing footprint and volume of the existing garage. We'd be shaving it back so it becomes a storage building at the back of the property. And that will allow us sufficient, what's the word? Space at the rear for the benefit of the tenants. And we don't really want to take up any more of your valuable time. I'm happy to answer questions if there are any.
Regarding variance B, you're coming within 0.15 meters from the rear lot line. Does that result in any accessibility issues for this stairway?
Accessibility in what respect?
Getting on or getting off? I mean, how is it configured that it comes within 0.15 meters of the property line? An angle? Side of the stairs?
It's a straight run of steps from the upper balcony,
okay. And
then it makes a 90-degree turn at the base of those steps.
So that's where. So it's the side of the stairs that's 0.15 meters from the property line, not the base. There's no accessibility issue with that staircase.
Well, we're asking actually for the stairs to project 7.355 meters into the rear yard and to be 150 millimeters from the rear lot line and 0 meters from the side lot line.
I'm looking at it now, and there's no accessibility issue because of the way that the stairway is configured. It's just close to the property line. You can get up and down the stairs.
Are you talking about
you can get up and down the stairs, Mr. Pearson? There's no accessibility issue. It's just the side of the stair is close to the property line on 2 sides.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. As far as that balcony, the fire balcony or the refuge balcony at the front, Is that a requirement of the fire code for the province?
It's actually a building code requirement to have a second means of exit from the third floor.
Okay. And if there's an issue in the house and you go out on that balcony, then where do you go?
Onto a fire ladder from a truck on the street.
Okay. So this is this balcony therefore meets code.
Yes.
I'm just curious.
Also, I should mention that we've received no objections this time around.
Yes, that's clear in our in the materials that we have before us. You're aware that you're within the permit control area for the Ministry of Transportation for Ontario because of your proximity to the Queensway.
Yes, that appears to be something new because that didn't come up the first time around.
Yeah, well.
But it appears they have no concerns. Ministry approvals and permits are required prior to construction and/or demolition of any buildings, which I believe is new information to us. So I presume that would apply to the current building permit applications we're making, or is this just for the future?
No, I'm assuming that it would apply to your current building permit applications.
All right. So that will be done.
Contact with the Ministry of Transportation for Ontario.
Yeah.
This is standard stuff from them when a property is that close to a 400 series highway.
But how long has that been the case?
Jeez. Ms. McLean, you'd know better than me.
I think we've seen it for quite some time, but and they may have missed it on. They may have missed commenting on the previous application, but it is a standard comment that we received from the Ministry of Transportation.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Yes, there's no objections from the department. Only one comment coming in from MTO. There's no conditions being requested. Any other comments from the members of the panel?
Mr. Chair, I might if the committee decides to approve it, I might be inclined to recommend that we tie it to the life of the structures.
Yeah, I think that would be prudent to tie the only condition is tied to the life of the building.
Understood.
Approval. Okay. All in favor of approving this application as proposed? Your application is approved. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Next application before us is item number 8 on the agenda, 473 Albert Street. Minor variances to permit an increased building height, reduced rear yard and front yard setbacks, reduced easterly and westerly side yard setbacks to permit reduced drive aisle widths, a reduced landscape area, and a reduced visitor parking rate for the conversion of the existing 11-story office commercial building into a 158-unit residential building with ground floor amenity space. And the agent on this application is Ms. Douglas or Ms. Tavares.
It's Doucette, and yes, it's Josie.
Oh, sorry. Again, I haven't got glasses on. I still can't read.
No problem.
All right. I'm going to have to administer the oath before we begin.
Absolutely.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing and clearly visible and legible during the entirety of that time?
I do swear this is true.
Right. So briefly, discuss your application with us.
Sure. I have a presentation if the coordinator wouldn't mind bringing it up.
Okay.
Fantastic. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and committee members. My name is Katie Doucette. I'm an agent working on behalf of Internet REIT. I'm here with my colleague, Josie Tavares, seeking variances for our property located at 473 Albert. InterRent is currently in site plan process to convert the existing 11-story office commercial building to residential. As the application indicates, there will be no change to the existing building footprint, rather improvements to the exterior facade. The majority of the changes proposed will be in the interior of the building. In order to proceed with the proposed conversion of 473 Albert, minor variances will be required to bring the existing building into compliance with the current zoning bylaw. Next slide, please. The first variance is for additional building height. The overall height and massing of the building will remain unaltered due to the change of use at level 12 from a mechanical penthouse, which is a permitted projection above the maximum height, to proposed indoor-outdoor amenity space. An additional 0.6 meters or 2 feet is required. Next slide, please. I believe we just skipped through one. The one of subject property, just the existing front was the slide. There we go. The next variant is for reduced landscape area. Currently the site, there is no landscape area. Throughout the proposal, the owner will be improving the landscape offering where possible by using planters along the front of the building and providing plantings and outdoor furniture for resident use at the rear. Okay. Next slide, please. The next variance is a result of existing underground parking garage condition. No change to the garage ramp, the parking levels, or the drive aisles are proposed, although an existing drive aisle and ramp widths are insufficient. The small size garage and change of use of the building to residential from office will result in lower trip volumes and see fewer conflicts between inbound and outbound vehicles. The building is situated downtown, close to active and public transportation, thereby reducing the need for personal vehicles. Additionally, a traffic consultant has been engaged and is working with the city planning department through the site plan process. The next variance proposed is to decrease the number of required visitor parking spaces. Due to the existing conditions, there's a limited number of parking spaces available. These spaces have been allocated to provide a healthy mix, both residential and visitors. Last slide, please. The last few proposed variances, the setbacks, are a result of the existing building footprint and cannot change as the building is existing. For these reasons, please consider the proposed variances as they will have little to no impact on the neighboring properties and community. Variances are generally required to legalize the existing conditions. All elements of the building will remain the same except for improvements to the city street, public realm, overall vibrancy of the community. Thank you for your time.
Thanks for your presentation. Any questions from members of the committee on this application? A suggestion from one of our members is that we tie approval to the life of the building.
Understood.
Okay. With no questions, no concerns, the planning department is in agreements. There are no conditions save the one we will add regarding tying approval to the life of the building. All in favor of approving this application? With that condition, application's approved. Good luck with your project.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Next application before us today, item number 11 on the agenda, 233 Royal. This is a consent to subdivide the property into 2 parcels of land in order to establish separate ownerships for an existing semi-detached dwelling. I believe Mr. Segreto is the agent on this. Mr. Segreto.
Good afternoon.
I have to go through the solemn oath or declaration. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process by the committee was posted at the property to which the property applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing and clearly visible and legible during the entirety of that time?
I swear.
Okay. So this is simply simply a consent application, Mr. Segreto?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And you're aware of the conditions requested by the department: cash in lieu of parkland, a servicing plan, joint use and maintenance agreement, grading and drainage plan, and a noise attenuation study.
I don't agree with the last one there, the noise. The building is already up. I don't understand how that would apply to this particular case.
It's because you're within 100 meters of Churchill Avenue. Perhaps the planning department could comment on the need for this noise attenuation study.
Yes, thank you. That's a standard requirement when the plot is located near the major street.
Okay. Building's up, Mr. Segreto, and well, this, as the planner has indicated, this is a standard requirement. You've seen them before on applications that you've.
Okay, well, we have to do it, then we'll do it.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay. There was a comment that came in from some of the neighbors on the street regarding replacing the tree, I guess, that was taken down before construction began.
I'm not aware of that, but I will make sure that my client knows about it. And if there were agreements in that, if he has to replace the tree, then he will definitely replace the tree.
Okay, because we have correspondence on file from I think one street resident on behalf of 6 residents. I think the Westboro or the community, the local community association is probably aware of this. You may want to get your client to to contact those people.
I will.
Okay. All right. In favor of the consent with those conditions. Application's approved, Mr. Segreto. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next application we will deal with today is item number 14 on the agenda, 135 Duford Street. It's a consent to subdivide the property into 2 separate parcels of land that is proposed to construct 2 new 2-story semi-detached dwellings, one on each of the newly severed parcels. The existing dwelling is to be demolished. And the agent for this application is Ms. Sample, or is it Ms. Smith?
Ms. Smith.
Ms. Smith.
Yes.
We have to go through the solemn declaration. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing and clearly visible and legible during the entirety of that time?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And I understand that you have resolved the 1 foot reserve issue.
Yes, we've been informed that it is a corner lot. The 1 foot reserve is the corner property.
Okay, so that means that the condition number 8 regarding a 3.3 corner site triangle is no longer required.
Oh, I think the triangle is required. It means that the property on the north side does not is not a corner lot. 335 is not a corner lot.
All right.
We still need the site triangle.
Okay. All right. There are 8 conditions that I'm sure you're aware of: hydro easement, cash in lieu of parkland, a servicing plan, grading and drainage plan, joint use and maintenance agreement, existing dwelling removed, infrastructure agreement, and the corner site triangle.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So if you could very briefly explain exactly what you're requesting.
We're requesting just to sever the property in 2 parts.
Okay.
It's in Vanier North neighborhood. Next slide, please. You can see there's been quite a bit of development since 1991, and based on the size of the properties nearby, this severance meets the character of the neighboring property sizes, especially on the west side of Duford. You see all those new properties.
Yep.
Next slide, please. The zoning complies with the semi-detached, and nearby is an R4 zone with a lot of triplexes. There is a semi-detached building just further down the street at the corner of Duford, just to the left, and a new one will be built. That's Perrier, that the street that comes in at a T intersection, and I think there'll be one coming to your hearing in March for one nearby on Perrier for the height limit.
Okay.
Next slide, please. This is the existing survey plan. Next slide, please. Oh, it shows the reserve on it. Next slide, please.
Yeah.
This is an outline of what could be built on the property possible, but it shows the draft reference plan mainly with the size of the two properties.
Okay.
Next slide, please. This shows the zoning chart, which shows that we meet all the requirements. We're quite a bit less than the 6 meter requirement if it was each was a separate semi, or 12 if they're combined, and lot areas. So we're well within all the zoning requirements.
Okay. Okay.
Next slide, please. This just shows very conceptually what we are planning. We have submitted for the ones to the south. We submitted for building permit, but we have not completed the design for the building to the north. Notice that there is hydro line at the corner. So in spite of the fact that the zoning would allow us to go quite close to the property line, now we do have to stay away from the hydro lines.
Okay.
Next slide, please. This is a view looking down Duford. The property is on the left. That's Grand Maitre, the street on the left. So the property is on the left. Those are the newer developments on the east side that I showed, sorry, on the west side of Duford. Next slide, please. And the property is on the right-hand side, looking down to Grand Maitre. So I saw the letter from a neighbor requesting a stone on if they do develop this property. And if we were to, we would definitely put stone on that facade as well, and try and create some character of a street facade as opposed to an interior lot look, if we were hired to do that building as well.
Right. Okay.
So thank you, Mr. Chair and committee members. If you have any questions, I'm here to answer your questions.
Any questions for Ms. Smith regarding this application? Comments? I note that there was, well, Hydro said there's an easement required. You're aware of that, obviously.
Yeah.
The planning department has no objections. We did receive a letter from a nearby resident concerned with loss of privacy, the impact on the neighborhoods, more traffic and parking issues. You're aware of that letter, Ms. Smith?
I am aware of the letter.
Okay. Any comments in regard to those points made by the resident?
Well, I guess if you look at the previous slides, you'll see there's quite a few driveways on that street already. I assume that there's a lot of people owning automobiles in that neighborhood already.
Yeah.
I feel the city is going towards more pedestrian-friendly use. And I don't think it will have a large impact for traffic.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Smith. Are we prepared to vote on this consent application? All right. All in favor of the consent application with the conditions imposed? Thank you, Ms. Smith. Your application is approved.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. The next application we'll deal with, final application on the agenda, item number 16. Eric Levine Holdings Incorporated, 1069 Canal Woods Terrace. And this is a minor variance application to permit a street-facing ground floor secondary dwelling unit to be located on a lot with a legally non-complying lot area. Is, agent is Rutherford.
I'm Paul Kershaw for P2 Concepts for the agent.
Last name, sir?
Kershaw, K-E-R-S-H-A-W.
K-E-R-S-H-A-W. And your address, please, sir?
I work at P2 Concepts at 739 Ridgewood Avenue.
739 Ridgewood Avenue. All right. Thank you. All right. If you'd like to present your application, please, Mr.
No problem. Good afternoon.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, we do.
Oh, that's right. I keep forgetting.
Yeah.
I have to deal with you first on the.
If you could let the owner in, he will affirm the posting, please.
Okay.
Oh, Eric, yeah, he's there, so he will.
And Mr. Chair, I might note there was a letter on file from a neighbor indicating that the sign was posted on the veranda and perhaps didn't meet the criteria of being legible to the street, but I'll just leave it at that.
Okay. All right. Regarding the declaration, do you're muted right now? I can hear you. You can hear me? Okay. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing and clearly visible and legible during the entirety of that time? I can't hear you, sir. I still can't hear you. We have no volume. And now you're well. Yeah. We have no volume from Mr. Levin, Mr. Kershaw, so I'm going to have to ask you to. Pardon?
No problem.
All right. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing and clearly visible and legible during the entirety of that time?
I affirm.
All right. All right. If you'd like to proceed with your presentation, please.
Sure. Just a good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. We're acting as the agent for the owners at 1069 Canal Woods Terrace for this minor variance application. I just asked that. Thank you for the slide. To open, we'd like to just give the committee some insight to the existing property. The existing property, the existing two-story dwelling is located on a lot that's larger than most on the street that it's situated. The owner is the local landlord with family in the neighborhood, and the property in question has a groundskeeper and handyman that regularly visit the property. Grass and snow removal is contracted out to ensure that the area stays clean and year round. The next slide, please. We are proposing to add a secondary dwelling unit in a portion of the ground floor of the existing dwelling. The secondary dwelling unit will be a bachelor unit with an approximate area of 25 square meters, which represents approximately 31% of the total floor area of the existing dwelling. The primary unit will occupies the total basement, the remainder of the ground floor, and the entirety of the second floor. The proposed second floor dwelling will not add any extra floor area or change the exterior of the building at all. The only change will be the demising wall that you can see on the first floor level. The property is located in an R3 zone, which allows for a secondary dwelling unit within the existing dwelling. However, the bylaw states that secondary dwelling units are not permitted on a lot that is legally non-conforming in respect to lot area and lot width. The R3 zone requirement is 7.5 in lot width and with a minimum lot area of 197 meters squared. Our lot is 10.18 meters exceeding the minimum. However, our lot is 181 square meters, which is 14 meters squared shy of the required. As a result, the non-conforming of lot area will require a minor variance to allow for this secondary dwelling unit. Would you like me to go through the four, or are we okay there and I can accept questions?
Or go through the four tests?
Sure. If you'd like me to, I can.
Yep.
Okay.
Do we have any elevations other than of the building?
I do not. It's an existing building, so we don't have any. Nothing's changed. The entrance is still the entrance. The windows are still the windows.
Is this student housing, by the way?
It is, yes.
And how many bedrooms?
Single family on the no, it's not.
No, it's the student upstairs and one downstairs.
Students upstairs and the one on the bachelor in the front.
Okay.
Okay.
Right.
The purpose of the sorry.
Please continue.
So the four tests, the general intent of the official plan, the purpose, the proposed use of the land is a permitted use for the property and the property is currently a single family home. Introducing a secondary dwelling unit on the ground floor of the property is in keeping with the general development pattern of similar properties in the area. The property immediately to the south is has two units, and the property immediately south has 2 units, and immediately south of that has 3. The secondary dwelling unit has been designed to fit and work within the existing constraints of the building, and it is appropriate density to nearby properties and will not cause undue adverse impacts on the surrounding properties. General intent of the zoning bylaw. With the zoning bylaw permitting, zoning permitting in the use within the existing fabric and intent of the purpose of the zoning is maintained, and the variance requested is minor in nature and will allow for sensitive infill development. The requested variances are not required in any building addition, or not requiring any building additions or expansions, and modification to the ground floor will allow the secondary dwelling unit within the existing will not result in any other minor variances and represents a small modification to the property. The scale of the secondary dwelling unit is compared to the primary unit is within the zoning requirements. Desired and appropriate for the area that it's and land. With the property being within the walking distance of Carleton University, this secondary dwelling unit represents an appropriate additional unit within an existing building, with the same of nearby properties on Canal Woods having more than 1 unit on each property. This is in keeping with the surrounding area. Variance being minor in nature, it is our opinion that the minor variances requested maintains the general intent purposes of the official plan and is desirable for the appropriate development and land, and it represents a sensitive, modest intensification of the subject property and will not create any impacts with the surrounding properties. In conclusion, we request this minor variance we feel that our request for the minor variance meets all the 4 tests for approval. So thank you for your time, and if we can have any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Kershaw. Any questions for the applicant's agent? On this application, Mr. Levin, you had your hand up. Do you wish to speak?
Well, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Ah, perfect. Okay, I was using an external speaker, that's why. I just want to make a correction. So this is student housing upstairs, and the front would also be a single student.
Okay. All right. Thank you. You realize that there are a number of residents on the street who have issues with the with this application, and I think we have Mr. Bauer on the speakers list. Is he there?
Mr. Chair does not appear to be in attendance.
Okay. Well, there's no speakers. So you gentlemen have seen the correspondence from the neighbors regarding this application.
May I speak to that?
Sorry,
Yes,
Mr. Chair. Yeah, we've seen all, just 1 second, Eric. We've seen all three, we've read all three, and I think Eric will be addressing that. And I think all the concerns would probably be addressed by him just explaining what the concerns were. And I think it's best coming from him.
Okay, that's fine. Mr. Levin, please.
Sure, thank you very much. First of all, I regret that I didn't approach the neighbors before I even started this procedure. But my intention and what I will do is be going around and visiting the neighbors and handing them my business card. So they'll have my phone number and my email address. I have 6 properties in the neighborhood, and I'm a very serious person. Anal would be a good description for me. When it comes to things like garbage, when the students move in and out, I provide a service where we remove all their refuse, all their cardboard, furniture that they didn't want, etc. We do it on their behalf at no charge to them. So I want to make sure that I'm a good neighbor, not somebody that you read in the newspaper from time to time. Neighbors that I have at other properties like me. They believe that I'm doing a good job, and I plan to continue to do so. We have a handyman that goes regularly to our properties. We solve problems and issues at great speed. We have a groundskeeper that's there very regularly. And other than during COVID, we have actually a cleaning person that cleans the apartments. And so they're there every 2 weeks. So we monitor our properties quite well.
One of the neighbors said that student housing is not desirable. Are there issues with your properties with students in them?
I've been doing this for 16 years. And what I do is, if there's an apartment of 4, all 4 people sign a joint and several lease. Then both of their parents, each parent guarantees the lease. And so in 16 years, I've never missed a rent payment. And once I've had a problem, and I acted on it with great speed, and I solved it. Not going to say that there's never any problems. I mean, you could have neighbors next door with young kids screaming on the street or dogs barking and annoying people. But generally, we have great experience with our tenants. We really do.
Right. Okay. Any questions of either Mr. Levin or Mr. Kershaw on this application? And note that there's no conditions being asked for. Hydro Ottawa has simply remind you that you got to maintain clearance from their infrastructure.
Yeah, there's no exterior work being done, so that shouldn't be a problem.
Okay. Yeah, just you got to keep them
Yeah,
happy.
exactly. We know hydro.
Or they'll turn off your power.
That's right. Yeah.
All right. So there's no questions from the committee on this. Are we prepared to vote on this application? All in favor of the application as presented? Mr. Wilder? All right. The application is approved. Good luck.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Have yourself a great day.
That being the end of the agenda, this hearing is now officially closed. Thank you very much.